All right, let's get it. Drive time Wednesday afternoon, 14 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. It is rainy. It is cold. When I woke up to walk the dog, it was 37 degrees in the month of May. It's about 48 degrees, but rainy and cold here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. A little bit of a cold front today, throughout the course of most of the week, but as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. Today you are halfway through that work week. You're one day closer to the weekend. We got a jam-packed Wednesday show for you guys that features a game day for Real Salt Lake. RSL actually is in action tonight. 7:30 Mountain Time kick as far as the local stuff goes. They're going to welcome in Portland. They've played really well this year. RSL's been on the road. I'm told that even with the weather like it is tonight, inclement weather notwithstanding, a sellout crowd expected at America First Field out in Sandy. So RSL is in action tonight. NBA playoffs continued tonight after a fun night last night. Both the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors will try to stave off elimination. It is staving season in pro basketball. The New York Knicks looking to advance. The Minnesota Timberwolves looking to advance. We'll get to some of that on the show today. Get you ready for the games tonight. We'll talk about what we saw last night, where the Indiana Pacers are just red hot at the right time of year. And for the 8th straight season, I think it's 8 straight years, Donovan Mitchell will go home before the conference finals. Cleveland Cavaliers have some decisions to make. Donovan dropping F-bombs during his post-game press conference. He will have none of what you will write about the Cleveland Cavaliers. He has had enough. Back in the gym, off-season. Pacers are good, and they're playing the right way at the right time of year. Let's not forget they were in the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago. Good game in Oklahoma City where the Denver Nuggets ran out of gas because they don't have a bench, and their head coach, Coach Adelman, decided to ride with Nikola Jokic during the entire fourth quarter, and they just no legs at the end. They were outscored by the young upstart Thunder 34-19 in the fourth quarter en route to a 112-105 win. Denver will return home to try to force a Game 7. So we'll get to some of that on the show today. Interesting piece by Tim Bontemps, friend of the program, about the lottery chaos and Jason Tatum's injury, which happened at essentially on the same night, not at the same time, but I called it one of the most consequential nights in the history of the NBA. And we could look back on it as far as what Boston will decide to do. Now, I'm not ready to dismiss Boston altogether, but some interesting comments about the lottery, namely about teams that tried to tank last year, the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards. According to Tim Bontemps, several executives around the league were happy that teams that spent the year trying to be at the top of the draft and lose games intentionally did not succeed in securing the top pick. One scout said, quote, "The good thing about lottery night is those teams that tanked didn't get any help. Tank all you want, but it does not guarantee you anything." According to one NBA insider. Could that color the conversation and context about what Utah Jazz will do next year to try to approach the season a little bit differently? We will get to that on the show today. And the latest with the offseason stuff, the latest with the lottery, a couple of names available maybe at 5 as the NBA Combine rolls along. So a lot to do on the program. Our first guest today is going to be none other than Quentin Richardson, who played in the NBA for a number of years with the New York Knicks and some other teams. We'll preview tonight's playoff action with Q. Sarah Todd, who covers the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News and was in Chicago for the lottery, maybe still there for the NBA Combine as well. Sarah's going to stop by today. The Stanley Cup playoffs roll along. Utah Hockey Club will be fortunate to draft number 4 in the lottery. Neil Smith joins us for his weekly hit to talk a little hockey. And then we'll do some college football and whatever else comes our way with Chris Kamrani live in studio, weekly guest of ours. Is going to join us today on a Wednesday afternoon. So Quentin Richardson, Sarah Todd, Neil Smith, Chris Kamrani, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. That guy, Porter Larson, on a night where his New York Knicks might advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. Do you think they get it done tonight?
I think they do, man. Maybe that's... it is wishful thinking. As a Knicks fan, I feel like that's always kind of the case. But man, without Jason Tatum and with the way the Knicks have won some of these games, I think that they have a real opportunity to close it out. I think it's been kind of deflating way for the Celtics to go down. That being said, this is a team that has won a title very recently, if you remember. They're not going to go down without a fight. It's not going to be a blowout. I think if New York wins, they're going to have to really grit it out, or going to have to go back home and make it happen in MSG.
So Boston is a favorite tonight at home, despite Jason Tatum, of course, being out, not just for tonight, but for like an entire year. So we'll see what happens tonight. NBA playoffs, the action has been really, really fun. And we'll break it down with Quentin Richardson. If you're an NBA fan, you know who Q is. But before we get to Quentin Richardson on a Wednesday afternoon, then we're going to bring in Sarah Todd, Neil Smith, Chris Camerani as well. Derrick Henry gets a 2-year extension. So our computer is a little jacked up. All right, before we get to Q, on a Wednesday, it's time for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you to the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. You download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 at checkout. They're going to hook you up with $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. You do not even need to win. To grab that $50, it's on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you'll get $50 when you play that first $5 bet. Prize Picks run your game all season long. All right, I'm going heavy on Boston tonight. I'm going more on Derek White, 18.5 points. I'm going more on Jaylen Brown, 26 points. Give me more on Jaylen, 27.5 points. I will take less on Cat, 19.5 points. And I'll take less on Porzingis, 14.5 points, as the Knicks and the Celtics will do battle tonight for the right. Well, if the Knicks win, it's the right to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. Boston just trying to extend their series. So a couple of minutes here, and then we'll take a break and bring in Quentin Richardson. Of course, the market is still reeling from what happened, well, almost 48 hours ago, as the Utah Jazz, they were the worst team in the NBA this year, had the worst record in the NBA this year. As it was, that guaranteed them a top 5 pick and nothing more. 14% chance to grab number 1, a 48% chance to land at 5, and obviously the percentages manifested the results. They were the most likely to end up at 5, and that's what happened. It doesn't change the frustration. It doesn't change the hope, and as we talk about, it is the hope that kills you, right? It's all about your expectations. So how could this potentially change the approach of what the Utah Jazz will try to do next year? So the difficulty in analyzing the Jazz in the interim, like right now immediately, is, if we're honest, they just don't have enough to be very competitive in the West. So if they decide to scrap the whole, okay, we are just not going to take the endeavor seriously, we're going to fake injuries for our players, as they did all year, and then the league will fine us, and then we'll just have our 7-footer take a bunch of threes from the outside. So we intentionally sabotage games, and that's what they did. No matter the spin anybody wants to put on it, that is precisely what they did. So organizations, when they decide that the best route for them is to lose intentionally, will say things like, it's time for us to develop our young players, and we're going to lean in on player development. Justin Zanuck, during his postseason media availability, came as close as anybody all year long to admitting that they lost on purpose. What Adam Silver and the NBA tried to do in 2019 is dissuade teams from having a lack of integrity with their approach of building a professional team. Players and coaches are bred to be competitors. And certainly at this level, when you're able to evolve all the way to the top of an endeavor like this, you have to be a pit bull competitor. You cannot be okay with half measures. You cannot be okay with being asked to not give your best. it also sets a really, really dangerous precedent for the way that your young players will continue to handle themselves throughout their career moving forward. And it's why the previous iteration, as the Millers were the owners, never went all in on simply sabotaging a season. Now, there were some seasons they just didn't have a great roster. You know, that team with Al Jefferson and Paul Millsap, they actually did advance to the playoffs. They got smoked by the Spurs. They were never going anywhere, but they weren't trying to lose. And reference the Tim Bontemps piece a little bit earlier. And there are a lot of people across the landscape of the NBA that do not like it when teams are intentional about their desire to simply lose and are not honest about their efforts to compete. And so here's what Tim Bontemps wrote earlier today about a seismic shift in the landscape of pro basketball 2 nights ago, specifically about what happened with the lottery. So, quote, and let's see, we'll start here. We will start here where they get into the Utah Jazz. So there were some league insiders who were happy that the teams who spent the year trying to tank and trying to be at the top of the draft, namely the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards, didn't succeed in securing the top pick. Quote, the good thing about lottery night is those teams didn't get help. Tank all you want, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. One executive suggested to ESPN that if the league wanted to eliminate tanking, it should eliminate the draft entirely and instead let teams create salary cap space to sign rookies to deals. But even that executive said there wasn't a realistic chance of that ever happening for plenty of reasons, including future draft picks being valuable trade currency. So the hot takes fly every year after the lottery, namely from fan bases that are frustrated that the anemic seasons they've been asked to suffer through did not pay out for anything special. Now, it doesn't mean that this is forever with the Utah Jazz, but it means it's for right now. They're really, if we're realistic, they'll get a good player at 5. Like, this draft is deep enough that they'll get a good player at 5. But if you read a lot of the scouts and a lot of the prognostications, most people believe that if you wanted a franchise-changing piece, you needed a top 4 pick. And even if we're more reductive, a top 2 pick, right? But it's not the reality, so there's no use belly aching about it and talking about it all off season long. They'll grab a good player at 5. We'll talk about some of the options throughout the course of the show today and throughout the course of the next, 5-6 weeks before the draft on June the 25th. They do have cap space, so after teams have made decisions to jettison off some of their veteran pieces, and I'll give you just a few teams as an example, the Phoenix Suns certainly they're going to have to do something. Now, as we've talked about throughout the course of this week, the problematic element of discussing whether or not the Jazz could go try to get Durant or Giannis or Jaylen Brown if Boston decides to jettison their talent. Bobby Marks came out with his calculations. Boston will have a luxury tax bill of $500 million if they don't do something next year. That's the highest luxury tax bill in the history of pro basketball. It's a new ownership group. They just paid $6 billion for the Boston Celtics. And if the Celtics lose in the second round, my guess is the new ownership group does not want to spend $500 million just for the right to have a team that couldn't get out of the second round. So Boston with Jaylen Brown, Houston with Kevin Durant, and obviously there's the Giannis stuff as well. The issue is the Jazz cannot compete with packages put together by teams like Houston and San Antonio and Oklahoma City, who are the teams you're going to hear talked about as far as grabbing some of those stars. So we'll see what the Jazz elect to do as far as talent addition during this offseason. But even if they don't do anything outside of adding the number 5 pick and maybe the number 21 pick and maybe they grab a second rounder they like, my guess is this upcoming season will contain a lot of losing, but you'll see more of Lauri Markkanen. You'll see more of John Collins. You'll see more of Walker Kessler. I don't think we're going to see a lot of faking of the injuries anymore. I think they're actually going to try to have some integrity about this endeavor and put their best foot forward. And I think as a fan base, that's something you should look forward to. But we'll get back to this. Let's catch a break. Quentin Richardson is going to join us coming up on the other side of a Wednesday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 700. Boston Celtics, Golden State Warriors trying to stave off elimination tonight. We'll see if the New York Knicks can advance to their first Eastern Conference Finals since 2000. And, of course, Minnesota trying to get it done as well. Our next guest played pro basketball for a number of years for a number of teams, including said New York Knicks. It's a pleasure to welcome in Quentin Richardson to the program on a Wednesday afternoon. Q, happy Wednesday, man. How we doing?
I'm good. Appreciate y'all having me.
I appreciate the time. So, do you think the New York Knicks get it done tonight? Boston 8-2 without Tatum this year. They're a 4.5-point favorite at home. Q, how do you think it goes down in Boston tonight?
I'm skeptical right now, man, because on the one hand, I do think that the Knicks have the advantage. They got the momentum right now, and they've already won 2 games on their home court in this series, so they should, with all intents and purposes, be able to get the job done. But I just hesitate a little bit because the Celtics are champions. They do have pride. I don't think they want to go out in that fashion just saying, all of the rest of those guys individually, they don't want to feel like that once Tatum went down, it was just all over for them. So I'm sure they're gonna put their best foot forward and come out with a championship type effort for tonight. But I think as long as New York stays off, letting it become a big lead and having to fight back from that, and they get Brunson into crunch time, I think he can get it done.
Q, as somebody who played in the league for a number of years, I'll kind of concede to your opinion here. And I understand that the system is the system in Boston, the 5-out spacing. We're going to shoot a lot of threes. But when the threes aren't falling and you have like a 14 to 20-point lead, why don't you adjust a little bit? Look, I am all in on New York. I want to see the Knicks do it, but I'm kind of stunned that Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics haven't made more adjustments. Kind of help me understand this, will you?
I mean, when teams come into, once you get to this point in the season, you are who you are. You play the way you play. But I do agree, regardless of that, regardless if you got the personnel that they have, you have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Those first 2 games, it should have never gone down that way with them guys just continuing to fire away. When you got guys that are that good at driving the ball and drawing fouls and getting in the paint and making different things happen, and for them not to do that either of those games and watch a 20-point lead collapse, that I felt like it should have been some type of change, even if that is your philosophy. At some point, you got to try to do something else. Not to say you completely abandon the 3, but you got to try and, mix something else in there. Try something else as well.
Tell me what stands out most to you about the evolution of Jalen Brunson. I mean, we saw him. We're in Salt Lake City, and the final playoff series that the Jazz had with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell was against the Dallas Mavericks, and Luka got hurt, and Jalen was the primary offense initiator. And so we saw what he could do out here, at least in a truncated space. But a lot of people thought the Knicks were taking a big gamble on a guard that doesn't have great size, and that's not necessarily a modern-day NBA approach. What stands out most about how good he's been, Q, in New York?
I think for me, it's the mental aspect of it. His mental makeup. I think that's a big part of what makes him as good as he is. I mean, the player, he's unbelievable to be able to do the things he does at his size and without as much athleticism that he has. I mean, he's unbelievable with shooting the ball, and you can tell everything is repetition. Like, people ask, where does confidence come from? It comes from him getting in the gym and doing things so many times that he expects it to work. And I mean, the other part of that, man, to play in New York and to have the type of mental makeup he has, it's the perfect marriage, because he doesn't get too high or too low with anything, and I don't think he pays attention to a lot of the noise. And there's not a lot of people that could do that. People say, "Yeah, I don't care, I don't listen to what nobody say, or I don't read anything, I don't look at anything," but they do. And I think either whether he does look at it or not, I don't think it has an effect on him, because he doesn't put a whole lot of stock into it either way, up or down.
As somebody who played in that city, what will the reaction be of Knicks fans in New York if the Knicks can get it done and advance to the Eastern Conference Finals?
Oh man, I can't tell you how much pandemonium there will be, because I'm telling you right now, the Knicks fans are thinking championship, and I mean rightfully so. They absolutely have a crazy good opportunity to win a championship, and the first one that they've ever had a chance at in a long time. So I mean, they got a right to be excited and things like that, but I would be very cautious and respectful before I start saying we get into the finals. You still got to eliminate Boston, and you still got to watch the Pacers. The Pacers is not going to be an easy series, in my opinion. I do think the Knicks can beat them, but it won't be easy at all, I don't think.
No, not at all. I mean, Rick Carlisle, of course, is a championship coach, and they've got a
Great
bunch.
coach.
You know, and Q, you know this. I mean, they have a bunch of just dogs, pit bulls on the perimeter. I mean, guys that can really guard. And we had Donovan Mitchell out here for 5 years before he was traded to Cleveland, and we all kind of pull for Donovan, want to see him do well. But let me ask you, what stands out most about just how Indiana is playing the right way at the right time of year?
I mean, it has a lot to do with what you said, man. They got a really good team. They got a deep team. They got a lot of guys that they can shuffle in. They go about 9, 10 deep, and that's a big deal when you look at a New York team that only goes 6, 7, 8 deep. So, I mean, when you think about that, Indiana, they play at a fast pace, you know what I'm saying? Tyrese Halliburton is getting guys the ball, guys are running. And then, like you say, they got the intangibles, man. They got a Miles Turner who doesn't get enough credit. I feel like he's one of the few big men that really impact shots at the rim and that paint protection. He impacts it at a high level, but also goes out there and shoots threes. It's like you don't really get that a lot from guys that are shot blockers that can shoot at the high clip that he can, and the mid post and everything else. But I like top to bottom, man. They got a deep roster. Nembhard, Mathurin, they come off the bench. Neesmith is an absolute dog on defense. I don't know if a lot of people have paid close attention because it hasn't gotten like the whole rah-rah to it. But if you just take a couple possessions and you just watch him, just follow him, he is all over his man. He is getting over screens, through screens, around screens. He's getting up into people when they get the ball. He's pressuring the ball up the court. He's tremendous on defense. I'm a big fan of Aaron Neesmith on defense.
Let me ask you about Donovan, who I think it's now 8 straight years that he's not been able to get out of the second round. And look, it's obviously a team sport. It's not all on him. And I've seen Donovan Mitchell have individual playoff scoring nights that is very rarefied air. Do you think he is a number one Q on a team that can win a championship?
I do. I do think he can be a number one, but it has to be the right team. He has to have the right type of support. So, I mean, like you said, the years that he hasn't advanced, you can go through the numbers. We can't just, put it on him. Like, yeah, if you want to consider him the best guy to lead on the team, it falls on him from that respect. But, I mean, he's putting in major work. Like you said, rarefied air with some of the numbers he's been putting up in these losses and things like that. And then every instance you can point to someone else there that could have done more, been more, that were expected of him more for him.
Now, there are some rumblings that Steph is going to try to go tonight. I don't know what that's going to look like. Do you give the Warriors any shot of at least getting this thing back to San Francisco?
I give everybody a shot, man, just because I know the pride of us as athletes. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's one game. We just got to turn up one time and worry about everything else after that. So they definitely, I mean, they got. Even if Steph doesn't play, I still give them an outside shot. I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if Minnesota go ahead and close it out and handle their business, but I'm not going to say that I don't give the Warriors a shot. I know what Jimmy has in him. Draymond is a champion. Some of those other guys, these are pros, man. We got pride, and they not just going to lay down.
So Coach Adelman elected to leave Nikola Jokic in every minute in the fourth, Jamal Murray too, and I understand why. Denver's not as deep as Oklahoma City, but of course the Nuggets just ran out of gas, so now we go back to Denver to see if Denver can get this thing back to Game 7. I know you say you give everybody a chance, and certainly nobody would bet against Nikola Jokic, but what do you make of what we've seen so far with Denver and OKC, and how do you think it plays out?
I had OKC winning this series. I would say that I'm surprised because of the coaching aspect, because I don't expect a team that fires their coach three games before the playoffs. I didn't expect them to have any type of run. I thought they might have I wouldn't have been surprised if they got eliminated in the first round because of that. But I mean, when you, like I said, us as players, we got pride, man. They got Joker, who could be possibly arguably the best player on the planet right now. And Aaron Gordon has played out of his mind this postseason. He's been, all season, but particularly this postseason with the game winners and the timely baskets and things he's been able to do for them. And Jamal Murray has the superstar Jamal Murray has showed up. So right now, anything could go. I still don't consider this as a foregone conclusion for OKC. They definitely have to take this and come in with a sense of urgency and not allow them to get the crowd going and get into this game, because Denver's not going to lay down. This is going to be a dogfight, I feel like.
Q, I know you're doing the media thing now, and I know you played for a handful of different teams. Do you have a rooting interest in any of the teams left? Is there a team you'd like to see go win the thing?
Not particularly, man. I just really want to see, good basketball, good series, hard-fought games, teams, turn injuries off. I hate what happened to Tatum and anybody else that got injured. I want to see teams get to go at it with their full complement and just see who the best team is, man. I got a lot of different ties to different ball clubs and stuff like that. The New York Knicks, I'm once a Knick, always a Knick, so I definitely would be excited if they were able to win the championship because I know what that would mean to that fan base. To the franchise, to the folks that work in them buildings that's been working there for all them years, and they got to go through the ups and downs and things like that. So I know what it would mean from that standpoint, from being there for a period of time and seeing how on hands on the ground and seeing how impactful the Knicks are to that city. I mean, I've seen the Giants win, the Yankees win, but everybody still talks about how they waiting to see when the Knicks win, how it's going to be, and I would love to see it.
Last thing, Q, I'll set you loose on this. I know you got to run, but reports are that Giannis is now open to being traded from Milwaukee. Is there a team that you like as far as the fit goes? You think should trade for Giannis?
San Antonio. I would love to see the yin and yang to his powerful dominance playing alongside the unicorn or the alien that Wembanyama is.
All right.
And I think they got enough assets and everything with the draft picks they just got and some of the young players they can move and things like that with the contracts and stuff. I think they can make it happen.
There you go. Q, thanks for the time. Enjoy the games tonight. We'd love to have you back on soon, okay?
All right, man. Anytime, fellas.
All right. Quentin Richardson. He played in the NBA for 12 years. Played for the Clips, the Suns, the Knicks, the Heat, the Magic, then actually re-signed with the Knicks to retire. Played only a game for them. Was a really, really good shooter, good two-way player, kind of a 3-and-D guy before that kind of became in vogue. He's got a podcast called Knuckleheads. Is that with
Darius Miles?
Darius Miles, because they both were the Knuckleheads, right?
Yeah.
You can look on YouTube right now to watch me do the Knuckleheads. Can people see me doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
You're live.
This is Q right now. That's what they used to do. Was Q part of the Knick teams that you kind of fell in love with when you were early on in your basketball fandom?
Yeah, so I actually he was part of the Knicks teams early, right? And I don't think there was a Checketts overlap. It was 04, 05 maybe.
No, there was not.
Right. So it was kind of some of those late 90s Knicks players were still hanging around, a few of them, and Q was on those teams. I really, really liked his game. It was a little before the game became what it is today, which, man, you would love to have a Quentin Richardson from 2005, 2006 in a NBA roster today. And then, yeah, he signed with Melo's playoff run Knicks, right? The team that ended up going and beating the Celtics in round one, beating Kevin Durant and Paul Pierce in that team. Quentin was on that roster. So, yeah, he was a guy I liked a lot, and then has been good to me in the media sphere since he's joined. So he's a friend of the show now.
Yeah, McDonald's All-American, and I'll tell you what, Q was really good, but I thought Darius Miles was going to be like a 10-time All-Star.
Right. He's another one that's like that type of explosiveness, that type of athleticism and the length for sure. It pops on a college floor so much. And then, or even the high school stuff, right? With you look at like Stromile Swift. I think the same thing. Guys that show that type of domination at the previous levels, and at the NBA, almost everyone's like kind of like that, or they're 7 feet tall. So it evens the playing field a bit.
Yeah, Darius was 6'9". He committed to play at St. John's, then decommitted when he realized he was going to be a top pick. He was the number 3 pick overall, and never fully developed the way that we thought that he would. He played in the NBA for 9 years, bounced around a little bit. His best years were actually in Portland, not with the Clippers. Spent a couple of years in Cleveland as well. But, yeah, interesting stuff there. So a couple of interesting games tonight. It looks like the reports are that they're going to maybe attempt to give Stephen Curry some minutes tonight. I don't know how that's going to go. I mean, hamstrings are so tricky, but it's do or die. And, of course, Steph will give it his all. That's going to be a tough place to play. The Target Center in Minneapolis, when the Timberwolves are good, it's very much like the Delta Center when the Jazz are good. It's loud. The fans are right on top of you, and it just feels like the Timberwolves kind of have the Warriors' number. I don't fully understand why Jimmy Butler hasn't looked as engaged as I thought that he would. I mean, this was a guy that like single-handedly took the Heat to the finals just a few years ago. And with Stephen out, I thought we would see more of the Butler show than we've seen. And he's been just a little bit hesitant. And, is this kind of the moment Anthony Edwards, who already has a tremendous playoff pedigree, even as a young player, even takes that proverbial next step? It feels like we're high speed ahead to Minnesota and OKC. I'm not ready to bury Denver just yet. Denver just has so many depth issues. And I understand why Coach Adamant last night went with Jokic and Murray and Gordon and the entire group in the fourth quarter. The entire fourth quarter, the biorhythms with that team is typically Jokic takes about the first 3 or 4 minutes off of the fourth to kind of get him to finish it, and then usually they'll bring Jokic back in and sit Jamal for a little bit. But all hands on deck. They had like a 14-point lead in the fourth. And then if you were watching, every one of their three-point shots were short. I mean, the legs were gone. And the problem is Oklahoma City has a team where Mark Dagnall can go like 12 deep if he wants, and they're all young. I mean, off the top of my head, I think the oldest player might be Alex Caruso, and I think Alex is still in his 20s. I mean, that's where Denver's running into issues. They're so top-heavy, and they're just a little bit older. They don't have the ability to supplement the non-Jokic or non-Murray minutes the way that OKC can even do with the non-SGA minutes, because they can have Jalen Williams be their primary ball handler. So Warriors T-Wolves tonight, Target Center in Minneapolis, and then for the first time since 2000 against the Indiana Pacers. Ironically enough, the New York Knicks will attempt to make the Eastern Conference Finals. The Boston Celtics are a favorite at home. They're a 4.5-point favorite at last check, even without Jason Tatum. TD Garden's going to be crazy. Bill Simmons has the whole like Patrick Ewing theory, which is based off those Knicks in 1999 when they went to the finals with Ewing on the sideline. And his whole theory is that, all of these guys are really good players in pro basketball. And when the best player on your team, and I do think Jason Tatum is the best player on the Celtics, due respect to Jaylen Brown, who was the finals MVP a year ago, there's like this collective effort that kind of comes to the forefront. And Boston has plenty left, even without Jason Tatum. 8-2 without Tatum this year. Of course, it sucks to have an injury adversely affect you. So those are the two games tonight with the Knicks and the Celtics, and then the Warriors and the Timberwolves. TNT will have that for you. The Pacers stuff is really interesting. And Rick Carlisle himself post-game, both Rick Carlisle actually and Kenny Atkinson last night. So Kenny Atkinson, Coach of the Year, Cleveland Cavaliers. They get rid of J.B. Bickerstaff. He goes to Detroit. Kenny came in, did a really good job with Cleveland. And Kenny admitted last night, like, they're just playing at a level that we're not at right now. And when you look at Rick Carlisle, what Rick Carlisle has done, inserting Andrew Nembhard into the starting lineup and Aaron Nesmith, who was injured for a while, alongside Pascal Siakam, who's been an all-star, and Miles Turner, who's like Mr. Pacer. For 10 years, he's been a steady big for them. And then, obviously, their linchpin is Tyrese Halliburton. But they also can go 9 deep with Obi Toppin, T.J. McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, who wants to fight everybody. And Ben Shepherd's a good player. They've got 4 or 5 wings that will cause the Knicks a lot of problems if the Knicks can get past the Celtics tonight. But that is the perfect example of a team that kind of slow-played it and then just figured it out come spring, and they are simply playing the right way at the right time of year. And interesting to hear Q talk about Donovan Mitchell as the number one option for a championship team. I honestly don't really know. And I'm conflicted here because I've seen Donovan have individual scoring outbursts in playoff games that put him alongside the elite names in the history of this game, including Michael Jordan, including Allen Iverson, some of the great postseason scorers we've seen. Donovan has numbers to match them. But there's just something that happens down the stretch where he cowers away from physicality. So you hear this thing about him where he understands the moment, and he steps up when the moment is the biggest. And I would actually counter that he steps up until the moment is absolutely as big as the moment can get, if that makes sense. And it sounds like a criticism. And in a way, maybe it is, but I'm not trying to be critical. I just don't know, because I saw it here over and over and over, where he'd have these games where he dropped like 40 or sometimes even half 100, And then you look at the box score, you're like, you can't be critical about Donovan because he had 40. But what you don't see are weird turnovers down the stretch or simply cowering away from Benedict Mathurin or Aaron Nesmith and not responding to physicality in big playoff moments the way superstars have to respond. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll say it again. My biggest thing about are you a legitimate superstar in pro basketball is you get it done in the playoffs on the road when the moments are at their biggest. And when the moments have been as big as they can get, Donovan just hasn't met them yet. 27, 28 years old. I think he's 28 years old. So he is smack dab in the middle of his prime. And my guess is Cleveland does run it back. They have all of their big four under contract. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell. DeAndre Hunter, who they acquired in a trade with Atlanta, provided some punch. Isaac Okoro is a good perimeter defensive player. Ty Jerome had a solid year. So what do you do with the Max Struses, the Dean Wades, the Ty Jeromes, like the decisions you have to make? Another team to look at is as it pertains to whether or not the front office is making a different calculation because of another playoff failure. But we'll see. Only time will tell. It felt bad for Donovan, but he did step up to the podium and drop a bunch of expletives to show you that he's serious about improving. Quentin Richardson today stops by courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. When the seasons change, if you're like any good coach, you'll put together your game plan for a healthy green lawn, and you'll turn to the experts at IFA. Check out their 4+ lawn care program. Everything you need to make your yard a hit. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Coming up on the other side, Sarah Todd was in the lottery room for the Deseret News. I believe she's in Chicago for the NBA Draft Combine. We'll bring in Sarah coming up. Going to do some Utah Mammoth and some NHL with Neil Smith, and then we'll do some college football and bounce around a little bit with Chris Camerani. Busy show on a Wednesday afternoon. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, there was some conversation about Stephen Wardell Curry giving it a go tonight. He will not do that. He has been cleared to participate in some on-court drills, but he will miss the game tonight as the Warriors are trying to stave off elimination. So now it is official. We got Knicks Celtics. That's your early game, but let's go to Chicago, where we find ourselves, one of our favorites, Sarah Todd from the Deseret News. Sarah, happy Wednesday. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm here at the NBA Combine, so any apologies if there's buzzes and normal kind of arena sounds in the background.
No, I actually kind of like it. When I hear whistles and sneakers sneaking on the floor, it makes me miss basketball. So I think we'll take the background ambient noise. So Sarah, you were in the room when it was revealed the Jazz would fall to 5. Obviously, folks around here are not too thrilled. Let's just talk about your experience, big picture. What was it like to kind of be there and experience everything?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in that room multiple times at this point, and that was certainly the most unique experience being in there. It's the opposite of how the lottery is revealed on television, right, where you start with 15 and you end at 1. And when you're in the room, number 1 is the first 4 balls drawn, so it happens very, very quickly. And to say that there was nobody in the room that expected it to be Dallas would be an understatement. It was shocking, and I mean the looks that went around from NBA staff and legal and all of the team representatives and all of the media. I mean, there were audible gasps and people saying, "Oh my God!" And then very, very quickly, like within 40 seconds after that, the second pick goes to San Antonio, and it was the same reaction. I'm just stunned. Everybody in the room was stunned.
You did a really good job of painting a picture for the D News, and for our listeners who have not read that, I would encourage you to go to Sarah's Twitter profile and click on the links. So for our listeners that haven't read your piece, I want you to tell us when Justin Zanuck realized the Jazz fate and what his reaction was that you witnessed.
Right. I mean, I was sitting maybe 5-6 feet away from Justin, and he's sitting next to Washington Wizards general manager Will Dawkins. They both have, an equal percent chance shot at the number 1 pick. And, before the pick is made or before the balls are drawn, there's nervous toe tapping and, kind of writing down on pieces of paper in front of you just to have something to do with your hands. And Justin, all of the team representatives, all of the reporters, everybody in the room has a list of all of the number combinations possible and the teams that they're assigned to. So kind of before everything starts, you kind of get a sense of what you're looking for. Even though they're going to call it out and announce it, you want to make sure to follow along if you can. And what was obvious was, number 1, all of the Jazz's combinations had the number 1. So a number 1 had to be drawn. Also, what was obvious was that the Jazz, in their number combinations, they could have handled 2 double-digit numbers. 3 double-digit numbers, it wouldn't have been a Jazz number. So another thing to kind of keep in mind when you're watching the balls being drawn. First number comes up, it's double digits. That's fine. Second number comes up, it's a double-digit number. Also fine. And then the third one comes up, and it's another double-digit number. And Justin put his pen down and just kind of knew that it was gone. It was over before even the 4th ball was drawn. And when it was announced Dallas, him and Will Dawkins looked at each other, looked back down at the papers in front of them, and looked at each other. They didn't know what to do other than kind of stare at each other and understand how drastically things were about to change. And, we're talking about 5 minutes before that, Justin Zanuck telling me about, the lucky bracelet that he has on that he's never taken off, and he's wearing his Utah Jazz socks. And then 5 minutes after, you have people shaking his hand and looking at him like his dog died. And so the shift in the room was immense.
So, Sarah, of course, it's an annual rite of passage in the world of pro basketball when a fan base is upset that their team didn't get the number 1 overall pick or the number 2 overall pick to then question this process and discuss whether or not it's legitimate, whether or not it's done with integrity, and whether or not the fix is in. No Mavericks fans are complaining about the lottery. No Spurs fans. Well, no Spurs fans should ever complain about the lottery. Let's be very clear about that. But fans of the Utah Jazz, fans of the New Orleans Pelicans, fans of the Pelicans don't have any beef either, but now I'm getting lost in the weeds. Washington, Charlotte, Portland, the fan bases of teams that moved down with Cooper Flag available at the top are all crying foul. I find it intellectually embarrassing that every time your candidate doesn't win an election, you cry that it's rigged, or every time your team doesn't win a lottery, you cry that it's rigged. But that's kind of where we're at. But since you saw the process and have seen the process, I will simply ask you, is this a fair way to do this, or is there anything that does not smell right in your opinion?
I mean, that's two different questions, right? Is it fair? It depends on how we define fair, right? Is it fair because the system and all the rules and the machinations of it are set up before you go in and you know what you're signing up for? Then yeah, that's fair. Is it fair that the worst teams in the league only get a 14% chance? Well, that was the goal of the league, right? Like, this is Adam Silver's goal. They talked about this in 2017. They put it into action in 2019. They flattened the lottery odds. And the fact of the matter is that discouraging tanking was the reason. And the three teams that tanked the most egregiously did not get what they wanted this year. And so, frankly, that has worked. And in the eyes of the people that set up that system, it's fair. Does something smell bad? Is it rigged? Absolutely not. There's just the idea that, right, the prevailing conspiracy theory, if we're talking about that, would be, well, the Mavericks gave the Lakers Luka at the bidding of the NBA league office or, brass. And so now they're rewarding Dallas. So does that mean the NBA league office also hurt Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis? Did they cause those injuries too? And frankly, if the NBA league office had the power and will to make these things happen, I don't think they care about Dallas. If they wanted Luka to go to the Lakers and that is actually how all these things happened, why reward Dallas? If they're that powerful, they don't need to give them anything.
Well played, and I probably should have just asked whether or not it's rigged, but I do want to lean into the answer you gave me for the first part of a clunky question and ask you whether or not you like what the league has done. Do you think it was the right thing to flatten the odds in 2019, and therefore, the motivation is to dissuade tanking? And Tim Bontemps from ESPN wrote a piece today quoting a number of different executives that were celebrating the fact that the Jazz and the Wizards specifically did not get the number one overall pick because people around the league don't seem to respect a team that is unserious about competing, unserious about competition. Do you think the NBA needs to look at this process, though, and maybe look at what the NFL does by simply rewarding the worst teams with the best picks in the draft?
Yeah, I think any system that you have where there's going to be a percentage chance, I kind of think you're going to get the same results, right? Even when it was just before it was the flattened 14%, right? You were getting the first overall worst record had a 25% chance. That's a lot better. That feels a lot better than 14% chance. And so I think you get a number of teams who are thinking, well, if we can be the absolute worst, then we have a really good shot. Flattening the odds just means, okay, well, then there's more teams that are going to get a stab at it, and maybe you can win it if you have a 1.8% chance, right? And so I think any system with a percentage is probably not going to discourage tanking enough to actually make it go away. If you went to a system where it was just yes, the worst overall team, the worst record gets the number one pick, and it just goes in order like that, I don't know if that means that you get, 3, 4, 5 teams jockeying for that worst overall record every season. I don't know what that looks like. And so it feels I guess I just still go back to it's fair in the ways the NBA wants it to be fair. It's probably impossible at this point to make it feel fair for everyone involved, like team-wise and fan-wise. You know, no one is going to be happy no matter how this all shakes out. And at this point, you're probably never going to discourage tanking unless you start changing player participation policy in a way, way, way different way than the NBA currently does it.
So now this brings up a really interesting discussion, Sarah, because I'm not a proponent of tanking all the time, but in certain unique situations, I am a proponent of tanking. And in the situation where the Jazz have found themselves in for the past 3 years, my belief has been that they need to go all in to give themselves the best chance at some of these prospects, namely Victor Wembanyama a couple years ago, namely Cooper Flagg this year. So I cannot sit here and say, that I disagree with what they did last year. That would make me a hypocrite. But now that we have the data, since 2019, there are 6 drafts where the worst team has not received the number 1 overall pick. And there are conversations about basketball gods and karma. And if you are not approaching this endeavor with integrity to try to be serious about competition, maybe you don't deserve to be rewarded for such a lackadaisical approach. Have you changed your opinion on what the Jazz should continue to do moving forward?
I haven't. I still think they should tank, and I did this year. If anything, what this lottery showed me is that karma is not real. You can trade Luka Doncic and have the most ridiculed front office in the NBA, and you can still get rewarded. So basketball karma does not work the way that I ever thought that it did. And the Jazz are not getting a top-tier free agent right now. Maybe they would have had a chance at something if they'd landed Cooper Flagg, but you've got to get players to get players. And the way for them to start doing that is through the draft. And next year, they've got a top 8 protected pick that if it falls out of that, they have to send it to OKC. And why would you let that go? Why would you try to get 24, 25 wins by playing Lowry and a bunch of rookies and second-year players just so that you can lose that pick and see another Western Conference foe get the pick that you would have had? I think it's the best strategy right now.
I'm with you. No one around here wants to hear it. Do you think the Jazz will continue this strategy? Now that, and Sarah, every time I've had you on since the end of the season, I've tried to kind of kick the tires on what could the offseason look like, but you were good to tell us we had to wait until Monday. Well, we waited until Monday. Now they have the 5th pick. How do you think this colors the context of what this offseason will look like for the Jazz?
Yeah, I mean, before the lottery, my answer to that question was usually, if they land Cooper, the only thing that would keep them from tanking in a 25-26 season would be if they were to go out and get another big-time player to put on the team. I think that is still my answer, even though they didn't land Cooper, unless they make a big trade, unless they use the number 5 pick in this year's draft, plus some other matching salary assets to go and get a big-time player. I fully expect for them to do the same thing. It's going to be a rinse, wash, and repeat of last year.
Okay, so, excuse me, let's move over to the, let's see. I'll call it the slight possibility that the Jazz are involved in a trade that lands a notable piece here in the market. So, as we know, it has been reported that Giannis is open to being traded from Milwaukee. There are teams like the Phoenix Suns that have hard decisions to make about really good players that are making a lot of money for a team that didn't do anything last year. If the Boston Celtics lose tonight, and quite frankly, Sarah, even if they don't, this is a new ownership group that, according to Bobby Marks' calculation, is going to be faced with a luxury tax bill of north of $500 million. Okay, so on one hand, we know that there will be very good players on the open market there to be had. On the other hand, I have a hard time seeing the Jazz come up with a package that's analogous to what OKC can put together, what Houston could put together, and certainly what San Antonio could put together. Do you think there's any chance that the Jazz have enough and will get involved to land a viable piece here in the market that could really invigorate this fan base?
Yeah, if Milwaukee actually wants to start having real conversations about potentially moving Giannis, I think that the Jazz would certainly try to be involved. But as you said, I don't think the deal that they could offer would be good enough when you consider the types of players and picks that you could get from other teams. You could get more higher quantity assets probably from the Jazz, but you're not going to get, the number 2 pick or, let's not leave Dallas out of this either, right? Like they could do a Cooper Giannis flip if they wanted to. And so there are a lot of teams that have a lot of things. Like if you think about the way that Milwaukee is kind of looking at their immediate future, they don't have assets. They don't have someone that's going to take the place of Dame once he actually gets healthy and is probably done with his career at that point. If they're giving up on Giannis, they need to have something really good to look to. And the Jazz don't have that thing to give them. And so it's really hard for me to imagine them being in the running.
All right, moving over to, if we operate off the premise that the Jazz stay at 5, and there are a number of reports out there that the Jazz are going to try really hard to move up, and Zanuck himself talked about all the possibilities. Tim McMahon, who joined us yesterday, is reporting that the ownership of the Dallas Mavericks has laid the edict down that we are keeping 1 and we are drafting Cooper Flagg. It feels like it's a consensus that Dylan Harper is 2. And then we get into the Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Jeremiah Fears, Trey Johnson, the Malawatch kid from Duke. We get into that portion, Con Knipple as well. Give us a few names, Sarah, at 5 that you think will be there that the Jazz would take a look at, and maybe a couple of options that they could draft.
Yeah, I mean, all the names that you said just now are absolutely in the running, right? Trey Johnson, VJ Edgecombe, Ace Bailey, Jeremiah Fears, Con Knipple. I would also put in Derek Queen probably in that mix. That's probably the group of guys that you're looking at if they decide to keep number 5. And I talked to all of those players earlier today, and there's certain things that, like, if I was an NBA GM, that would really scare me about some of them. I mean, Ace Bailey's a guy who doesn't pass the ball, shoots a ton of mid-range shots. He's another project, right? I mean, even, VJ Edgecombe, who seems like kind of a complete two-way player, he's got some efficiency issues, and he's got some ball handling issues that would need to be worked out. Like, none of these guys are going to come in as, like, complete, ready-to-go blue-chip prospects. And so I think that one of the things that needs to be thought about kind of just beyond this draft is how many more projects are the Jazz going to be willing to take on? And at some point over the next, between now and probably next year's draft, like, there's going to need to be a lot of decisions made, because at this point you've got Walker Kessler, Taylor Hendricks, Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, potentially 4 draft picks this year, taking over the 4 non-guaranteed player spots that were on the roster last year. Next year's draft, how many more young players are you going to bring on? You can't keep them all, and a team like that is not going to win. So there are some big decisions about kind of who to cut bait with between now and then.
Yes, there is. So, Sarah, if we move over into the space, and it's really hard to have this exercise done sitting here in mid-May without knowing who's going to be on the roster. But if the Jazz have done their calculation, if they decide that we are going to be serious about competing, if they decide that we are not going to invent injuries, if they decide that they are going to play their best possible lineups every single night, what's best case scenario for them next season if there's no sitting Markkanen, if Walker's not shooting 7 threes a night, if Collins and Sexton and Clarkson, if they go all in to maximize who this roster is, what does it look like next year?
Honestly, I think obviously they win more games than they did this year, but you're probably still looking at a situation where honestly, the best case scenario from a wins perspective is you win some more games, but not enough to actually make it into the play-in, which would be the worst case scenario, because then you lose your pick. And so I just don't think that this team has enough right now, especially with how many young players you're going to have on the roster. Like, there's just no depth if you're considering it talent-wise, right? They're too young, they're too inexperienced, they're not ready for any of that right now. And so best case scenario is that they decide to go the other way, lose some games and keep their pick.
I'm with you there. All right, Sarah. Well, a rough week for Jazz fans. Hopefully, better times ahead. Enjoy Chicago and travel safe, okay?
Thanks a lot, Spence. Talk to you soon.
Sarah Todd covers the Utah Jazz for the Deseret News. She has 3 really good pieces up on her experience being in the room, the reaction of Justin Zanuck and the Utah Jazz contingent. All of those can be found on her Twitter page at NBA Sarah is where you find her. Stop by today, courtesy of our friends at Advanced Window Products. Look, here's the deal. If you need windows right now as the weather's about to get super warm, call them today, and you can save $2,500 off. You get $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. You guys know Advanced Windows. It's Nate Orchard. It's the mayor of Sac Lake City. It's Jake Weber. It's a great family company. It's been around for 4 decades. But if you anticipate needing windows in a few months, the nice thing about this offer is if you just call them and get on the schedule, you lock in those savings. So if you have windows you think are going to last through the summer, but you want to get them replaced prior to the winter when the weather is cold, just give them a call at 801-850-9100. It's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or visit advancedwindows.com. All right, we're going to catch a break. Coming up on the other side, we'll bring in Neil Smith. Now, Utah Mammoth, they will draft 4th in the upcoming NHL draft. They have some decisions to make in the offseason. The Stanley Cup playoffs are rolling along as well, so we're going to do a little hockey today on a Wednesday. Chris Camarati joins us live in studio for the 4 o'clock hour. Then we'll go from there on a Wednesday edition of The Drive right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. NBA doubleheader tonight. We'll get back to some NBA basketball. We've got Chris Camerani coming up live in studio for an entire hour. We'll do some college football with Chris. We have some Vegas over-under win totals for the Big 12. And Adam Rittenberg and the ESPN staff have ranked the off seasons for teams in the Big 12. Yes, we can actually rank off seasons in college football now. But in addition to a little NBA playoffs tonight, we have the battle for Lord Stanley's Cup rolling on with a doubleheader. It's the Panthers and the Maple Leafs tied at 2. And the Oilers will try to send the Golden Knights home as they lead that 3-1. Our next guest joins us on a consistent basis to talk a little hockey. It is Neil Smith on a Wednesday afternoon. Neil, happy Wednesday, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. 82 degrees here in Greenville, South Carolina, and just loving the weather.
Did you do that because you checked the forecast in Salt Lake and you know it was 37 degrees earlier this morning and it feels like February today, Neil?
Just trying to rub it in a little bit, Spence, that's all.
Okay, fair enough. I have a random question off the top for you based off of a current situation that's happened in our market. Now, the luck that the Utah Mammoth received during the lottery process is something that our basketball team has never had and now continues to never have as the Jazz move down to 5 in their lottery drawing. A lot of people around here were hoping they would get the number 1 overall pick. I wondered in your time as a chief roster constructor if you were over an organization that entered the lottery process with a great chance to have the number 1 overall pick and you actually fell, and how that affected your offseason plans and the fan base.
Well, I'm going to tell you how old I am by answering that. I was never involved when since they've had the lottery.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we didn't have that when I was with the Rangers. The lottery, I believe, came in 06, in 05, 06 when they made all those changes during the lockout. But I have watched the lottery, all these many years and seen teams move up and down. And every year the NHL seems to change what the rules are. I couldn't figure out this year's numbers by watching it on TV. I had no idea what they were talking about. John Butchergrass doing it for ESPN. But I was happy to see that Utah was able to jump up, which was a real good thing. Not as good as what the Islanders were able to do, jumping up from 10 to number 1, but certainly number 4 is going to give you a pretty good hockey player.
Okay, let me ask the question this way. And, this is a lot of apples and oranges because in the world of professional hockey, even if you get the number 1 overall pick, there is a chance that the fan base will not see that player for, a year or two. Now, that's not all the time. Sometimes the number 1 pick is ready to play, and we've seen plenty of examples of that. And, of course, in the NBA, you're going to see the player right away. But how does either moving up or moving down, how does good or bad luck in the lottery affect the offseason plans of a team that currently is in a rebuild like the Utah Hockey Club?
Well, I think that if your scouts know if there's more than one kid that can play in the NHL next year. 18 years old is extremely hard to play in the NHL. We've seen a couple of good ones the last couple of years in Bedard in Chicago, and then this year in San Jose. But it's not the norm. And from what I hear about this year's draft, it's not a generational player that will be picked number 1. And so obviously then as you go down, it'll be less chances of those players playing. But I think it goes into more of your longer term building plan that you could perhaps get a star player, a first-line player, a first-line defenseman, a starting goaltender when you're picking in the top 4 like that. So I would imagine Bill Armstrong and his staff are ecstatic that they moved up.
Is the main reason most of these players do not play in the NHL right away is size and physicality because they're young, or is it skill, or is it just the needing to develop? I mean, what are some of the main dynamics that ultimately lead to the majority of picks made not landing on the ground to play NHL hockey for a few years?
I think it's a combination of everything you said. I think it's the maturity of the physical body of an 18-year-old young man as compared to what he'd be like at 21. I think it's the mental side of handling the NHL, the money, everything at 18 years old as compared to when they get to say 21. I just think it's a combination of everything. It's the maturation process and the development process that you speak about. In other words, becoming a better player as you get older, which is a natural part of being an athlete. As you get older and get to that 1 year that you're in your prime, which is probably mid to late 20s, and then everything starts to go the other way. But it's a combination of everything you said. And some kids are able to come in at 18. They're strong enough to handle it. They're mentally tough enough to handle it. But that's case by case and certainly not the rule.
So we have several players playing in the World Championships. We have, I think, 4 of our players are on the U.S. team, and then we have a few players scattered around the international ranks as well. As a general manager, do you like the fact that your players are having this experience? Is it good for them to, stay in shape and keep competing, or are you watching these games with tremendous nerves, hoping a great young star does not get hurt? How does that land for a GM?
Well, first of all, you're very proud of the fact that you have those players that are asked to play on those teams. So that's a good thing. And it's a good thing to use in public relations that you have these players and that you've got a bright future because of these players playing in international competition and being the best of that country's players. So that's the first thing. Then the next thing is, I think anytime your players can play at a high level and compete for a championship, it's a good thing. So yes, you worry about them being hurt, but even if they were to sustain an injury at this time of year, you've got a number of months to go until you're back at training camp. So we're talking about having 5 months from now until the season begins. So you've got time to get them back. Whereas at the Four Nations tournament that was bang in the middle of the season, you got an injury then and you're going to miss time on your team.
So Clayton Keller, who is the captain here for the Utah Mammoth, was named the captain of the U.S. team. I thought that was pretty cool. What does that say about just kind of his presence for a team that has a lot of really good young players? They landed on Clayton Keller as their captain.
I think it shows that he's got a good reputation around the league. It doesn't come to the top of my mind who's the coach for the U.S. team, but obviously the coaching staff realized that he's got leadership qualities, and that's why they gave him the C. They knew that he had it with Utah, and so they do their homework. When they bring these guys all onto a team, they're looking for who's going to be the leader, and they've done their homework. They've talked to their home team, which would be Utah with Clayton, and they've talked to the coach, and they've talked maybe to the manager, and they've done their homework. So that just is a good signal that Keller is not captain by accident.
All right, let's jump around now to the series that are going on for the battle for Lord Stanley's Cup, the Stanley Cup playoffs, before we set you loose for this Wednesday. And I got to give you the credit. You pointed out Dallas as a team to watch, and now they're on the precipice of eliminating the Jets, who have been the best team out here in the West and maybe in the entire league all year. Of course, in the playoffs, certainly in the hockey playoffs, even 3-1 leads aren't safe. So I'm not saying it's done. But what stands out most about this 3-1 lead the Stars have over the Jets?
Well, there's a number of things. And the first one you've got to talk about is Mikko Rantanen, who came to Dallas late before the trade deadline. Actually had started the year in Colorado and been playing really well, but then because of the contract issue, he was traded to Carolina, where he's played a few games, but let them know that he wasn't going to sign long-term there. So they traded him to Dallas, where Dallas signed him long-term, and it took him a few games and a little while to get going, but he has just been a monster in the playoffs. I mean, he has been involved in something like 14 of their last 18 goals that they've scored. He's either got the goal or got an assist. So he's been just tremendous. The other thing that's good for Dallas is the last game they got Mikko Heiskanen back on their defense. He's their number one defenseman. He hadn't played since January 28th. So that was another great thing. Their goaltender, Ottinger is playing superbly. Played really well the other night again against Winnipeg. And the downside for the Jets, what's going on with the Jets? Well, they haven't won a road playoff game since 2023.
Wow.
They've lost every game on the road to the St. Louis Blues, which was 3 games. They won every game at home, which was 4 games. That's why they moved on. But now in playing the Stars, they lost their first game at home. They won their second game. They lost in Dallas in Game 3, and they lost in Dallas in Game 4 on Tuesday night. So the Jets are in trouble, and Connor Hellebuck, their Vezina Trophy winning goaltender, has not played a Vezina Trophy standard goal for them. He was very suspect against St. Louis. He's gotten better against Dallas, but hasn't been the same as what we saw during the regular season. So now they've got to win 3 straight games against Dallas, and Dallas is a confident group now that you can see it in their play. They're getting contributions from everybody. Last night, Mikhail Granlund, who came into the team late in the season in a trade with San Jose, he got the hat trick. They won 3-1. He got all the goals. Rantanen got an assist in that one. So they're clicking on all cylinders in Dallas right now, and Winnipeg's going to have to find out how to beat them, not only in Game 5 to stay alive, but then they've got to win a game on the road in Game 6 to be able to come home to try to win Game 7. So they're in tough right now.
Do you think there's a shot that Winnipeg can pull this off, or does it feel like they're cooked?
It feels like they're cooked to me. They could very much win this next game, Game 5 at home in Winnipeg. I don't see them getting out of Dallas with the series still going, not by the way the series has gone and not by watching it carefully every game. I just don't see it.
We'll stay out west before we finish with the 2 series out east. 3 of the 4 series have a 3-1 tilt for one of the teams, and we have a lot of the kind of proxy Golden Knight fans out here because prior to the Utah Mammoth landing here, the Vegas Knights were the closest team by proximity, and they're in trouble. They're down 3-1. Edmonton has them on the ropes. Same question, what's gone right for Edmonton? What's gone wrong for Vegas?
Well, we saw this movie last year when Edmonton came into the playoffs and got better and better as they went along, and they ended up going to Game 7 of the final. I'm not going to say that that's going to happen to them this year, but Vegas has had several injuries. Mark Stone, their captain, has been banged up. They haven't gotten as the Edmonton Oilers' weakness is their goaltending. Everybody's known that, except that their backup or number 2 goalie, Calvin Pickard, started the playoffs for them. Started this series for them, rather, played really well, but then got hurt. But then Stuart Skinner came in, and he's played really well in goal for Edmonton, in fact, pitching a shutout in the last game on Monday night. They've just been the Knights haven't been able to stay with them, and they're playing in Vegas tonight. Edmonton, Vegas obviously has to win this game because they're on the ropes at 3-1. I think Vegas will win this game tonight. That's what I believe because I think they play really well in Vegas, and Edmonton might take their foot off the gas a little bit. But I don't think that the Knights are going to be able to sustain and win 3 games and win the series.
So, I was going to follow up with you feel like Vegas is cooked, but you answered it. You're right. So not even a puncher's chance to get back in this thing?
I think they could, but, you're talking about Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard and Zach Hyman, and they're getting contributions from guys like Corey Perry and Evander Kane and guys that they're lower down on their roster. And so when McDavid and Draisaitl you take care of them, now all of a sudden Corey Perry puts one in, or suddenly Zach Hyman scores, or you've got Adam Henrique scored 2 in the last game. This is a deep team, and they're getting contributions from everybody. So I just don't see it.
All right, let's move over. We'll finish with the best series 2-2. We'll see what you think happens tonight. But Carolina has the Caps on the ropes 3-1. And I'm just going to keep asking the same question. What's gone right for the Hurricanes and wrong for the Caps?
I I think what's happened with the Hurricanes is that their weakness or their suspect was their goaltending. That people thought they didn't have playoff good enough goaltending, but they do. Freddie Anderson has played great for them, really, really well. The Caps just aren't the same team that they were during the regular season, and I'm not sure, Spence, that they've been the same team that they were during the regular season ever since the OV chase for the goal-scoring record ended on Long Island back in March. They just never got back to that high level that they were at. Carolina has just been faster than them. They've had way more scoring or shot advantages than Washington. And some of Washington's players that have been stalwarts for years, like John Carlson, has not had a good series as a defenseman. So, the Hurricanes basically are beating them all over the ice. I don't know how they're going to try to do it tomorrow night when they play back in Washington. Will they get more physical with them? But even that try, Carolina has stood up to them physically and not back down. So again, I don't see Washington coming back in this series. Here's the thing: when I say that I can see a team coming back, it's when I've seen that the games have been so darn close that it's got to tip the other way. But these haven't been close. The last game on Monday was 5-2 for Carolina. Before that, it was 4-0 in Game 3. It really has. The first two games were close, but these last two games have not been close. And so I don't think that Washington has it.
If I made you pick one, Neil, Jets, Golden Knights, Caps, all down 3-1, who has the best chance of coming back and making this interesting?
I would say Vegas. I know I said that I didn't think they'd do it because I don't. But if you ask me, you got to take one. I'll take Vegas to come back on Edmonton before I would take Winnipeg to come back on Dallas or Washington to come back on Carolina.
All right, moving over to the only series that's deadlocked at 2 apiece. It is, let's see, it's the Maple Leafs and the Panthers, and they're going to get going here in about an hour and 12 minutes. So what has caused this series to be deadlocked at 2? Who do you like tonight? Who do you think ultimately wins it and why?
Well, Toronto came out and won their first 2 games of the series because in Toronto. They were played in Toronto, and they won them both. And went to Florida. Panthers went back home down 2-0, which is a bad place to be. They won Game 3 in overtime, 5-4, and then they played a great game in Game 4 and won 2-0. And when you've got Mitch Marner and you've got Austin Matthews, and you've got William Nylander, and you've John Tavares, and you shut them out, you shut all those guys out, you're playing Panther playoff hockey that we saw last year. So it's 2 wins by the Leafs. 1 and 2 went to the Leafs. 3 and 4 went to the Panthers. Obviously, Panthers have the momentum. They're back in Toronto, as you said, tonight. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs will win because they have to win. If they lose tonight, it's over because they've got to go back down to Florida, win there, and then come back home and win again. I think Toronto will win tonight, but I still think Florida will win this series. I've said that all along, so I can't pull out now. I think that Florida will win this series, but I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto wins tonight and goes up 3-2 on Florida.
Now, are you doing the thing as a proud Canadian that you don't want to set yourself up for failure, and that's why you're picking Florida?
No, I'm not doing that as a proud Canadian. I'm doing that as a guy that wants to be right on ESPN 700 and doesn't want to come back on and hear, oh, well, I guess you were wrong about that one, Neil. So I'm just trying to pick who I think will really win so that you can't razz me next time I come on.
I can promise you I will not do that because you're teaching us all about this sport in a way that we need it. So let's move over here. Let's operate off the premise that Neil Smith, the brilliant hockey mind of Neil Smith is correct. And it's Panthers, it's Caps, it's Oilers, it's Stars. Who do you like right now out of both conferences to advance to the Stanley Cup final?
Well, first of all, you misspoke. So I'm saying Panthers versus Carolina, not
My bad.
Pats.
My bad.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure the listeners understand. So I'm saying in the East it's Florida and Carolina. I'm picking Florida. I'm saying in the West it's going to be Dallas versus Edmonton, and this is really tough. I am going to say Dallas against Edmonton, and that's a tough decision because it is. Those two teams are both going really good. I think it's Dallas's year.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But before I set you loose, let's just get one more thought on the Utah Mammoth within the paradigm of what you've seen in the playoffs and what the hockey club, hockey Mammoth, the Mammoth, not the Utah Hockey Club, what the Utah Mammoth need to do this offseason to throw punches consistently with the best teams in pro hockey next year.
Stay with the plan. Keep developing your young players. See if there's a free agent out there in July that is somebody that could really help supplement your team by either their experience or their power that they have. Don't go crazy on signing 3 or 4 guys and making your team older and getting off your plan. Stay with Bill Armstrong's plan and add to it if you can. And if they'll do that, they're going to make another jump next year because it's the two teams that made it in the West this year, St. Louis and Minnesota, both went out in the first round. Minnesota will improve because Minnesota's got a lot of cap room this summer. St. Louis was in a building process to perhaps for 3 to 4 years down the road and surprised everybody and made it. Utah's competitive with both those teams. They're competitive with Calgary, who's also in the mix. So stay with the plan. That's all I can say is do not get off your plan.
All right, Neil, for all of our new hockey fan listeners, how can they go find your podcast?
The best place to go is Spotify, I think, because everybody gets Spotify. If I say Apple, well, those people that are on Android, they don't get that. So Spotify carries our podcast. It's NHL Wraparound. We had Dave Jackson, the longtime referee, 30 years. Now the rules analyst for ESPN came on our show on Monday or Tuesday, rather. It's dropped. It's out there. He explains a lot of things that even I didn't realize. So I love bringing people on and talking about things that not everybody knows about and that it can enlighten people. And I think that's what we do every week, maybe every day. We do Stanley Cup dates, kind of cute word, cup date, every day to bring listeners up to what's been going on in the league. So it's a fun podcast, and I think everybody would enjoy it. In Salt Lake City, come on, subscribe. Help me out here.
Let's get those subscriptions up, Neil. I appreciate the time, sir. Enjoy the games tonight, and we will chat soon.
Always love talking to you, Spence. Take care, buddy.
All right, the great Neil Smith, general manager of the New York Islanders, the New York Rangers, won a Stanley Cup with the Rangers in '94, high-level scout for the Red Wings when the Red Wings were the Red Wings. That's why Detroit is Hockeytown, USA. And Neil stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Cortland Roofing. Re-roofing and roof repair experts with over 20 years of experience, family-owned and operated. Call Cortland Roofing today, and they're going to give you a free rain gutters, plural, with any roof replacement. It's about a $2,000 savings. So if you're in the market for a new roof, you might as well call Cortland Roofing so you can grab those free rain gutters and save a couple of $1,000s. Here's the number. It's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, or online at cortlandroofing.com. All right, we've got 2 hours down. We've got 2 hours to go. Coming up on the other side for an entire hour, our guy Christopher Camarani from The Athletic is live in studio. We have some over-unders for Utah football, Big 12 football. We have Adam Rittenberg and the ESPN College Football Roundtable staff ranking the off-seasons for Big 12 teams. Yes, we have those now. Bounce around a little bit with CK, have some fun on a Wednesday drive, so keep it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, we have an ongoing situation in the studio. Chris Camerani is live with us for the next hour, as he is wont to do from time to time. And my dog Duke has taken a real liking to Chris, and I'm going to try to keep Duke over here. But if you want to see Chris dodge Duke, try to hump him on camera, go to our YouTube channel, because Chris is wearing shorts, and Duke is a sweet, cuddly dog, but he has some claws that might hurt. Are you going to be okay?
Well, are you going to take care of your child?
I don't know how to do it.
Responsible parenthood?
Duke, come on over. I mean, I can't really do much.
I mean, you can.
How?
Tell him to sit.
Duke,
Stay.
sit. Duke, sit and stay. Is it working?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. If he humps,
Parents these days.
would you stop
soft.
it? We'll put him in the producer's room with Porter if he starts to hump.
Okay.
Because for some reason, he's taking a real liking to you. Duke, no humping.
No, he's good.
So if you want to see Chris on camera, try to avoid being humped by my 4-year-old dog, a sentence I never thought I'd say. Log on to our YouTube channel.
Correct.
How are you, Chris?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I cannot say the same for local basketball fans here in our market. Maybe folks don't really understand how a lottery works. I find it intellectually embarrassing that whether it's, okay, your guy didn't win an election, so let's cry foul. Let's say it was stolen, or your team didn't win the lottery, something's amiss. I almost don't want to spend any oxygen on it. Now, I understand why you're disappointed, and I even get some of the dynamics that don't land well with people that think basketball is scripted anyway. But how have you digested the meltdown in our market over the past 48 hours? Well, 36 hours or whatever.
There's a very thick sense of irony across the board here.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go back to kind of the idiom of, like, when you were a kid, your parents taught you, let's hope. And I feel like most of the previous generations were taught how to lose. You have to learn how to take an L, wear it, figure out a way to move forward, and, press on. But lately, man, it is a very fascinating kind of development we have culturally where we refuse to do that, whether it's in our personal lives, in our political lives, even in sports now. And it used to be like, I don't know, it used to be your annoying uncle or your annoying older brother's friend who would be like, dude, it's all part of this timeline.
Scam, man.
Yeah, the powers that be,
Big Brother,
all of that
Illuminati.
stuff. That's what I was looking for, Illuminati. And now it's like, I think Blarson said that like 75% of his poll said it's rigged.
With like 2,000 votes. It's not 10
it was like
votes.
3,000.
When I checked, it was 2. Did it get up to 3?
I think so.
Yeah.
So I think it is a societal failure to understand that life is hard. And at the end of the day, this is an entertainment business. This should be viewed as professional wrestling light. That's how I would put it to people. It is a product that you have to pay a lot of money for to see in person or either on your tablet, your laptop, or your TV. Now, it's not scripted to that level, but at the end of the day, it is still entertainment. So you have to figure out a way to compartmentalize how you want to prioritize this level of potential stress in your life. Because if you have a bunch of adults out there who are huffing and puffing and just want to go sit out in the rain and scream into the void like they're on Garden State in trash bags.
Good poll.
I think we have a pretty big problem on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, look, and again, it's one of the great things about fans in our state. They feel very strongly about the teams they support, and whether it's the Jazz or college football and RSL or Utah Hockey Club, I feel like the fans in our state are very passionate about the teams they support, and in a way feel like those teams represent something to the rest of the world that maybe, can shield the oddities that our state entails. And so maybe if the Jazz are good, then we're okay. Maybe if BYU football wins, we're not weird.
1,000,000,000%. That is why I think when the Donovan Mitchell show exploded onto the scene here, that's why he resonated with people at a level that really no other professional athlete really ever has before.
Yeah.
And the inferiority complex, which we've talked about ad nauseum on your show the last few years,
is on full display in the wake of this, of these lottery results. And we're talking about historically a pretty pervasive culture that is a us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to get into the anthropological levels of that on the drive on Wednesday, on a rainy Wednesday. But it is easy for a lot of folks here to cry foul when they believe that schemes are at play. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And it's so difficult to talk about this with any sort of nuance without sounding like you're being insensitive to a fan base right now that feels like they've been screwed. Because I get it, where it's not just a one-off, it's 10 times in the lottery without ever moving up. It's 10 times in the lottery without getting that magic ticket. But for every piece of quote-unquote proof or evidence you feel like you have to indicate that the fix is in, I can throw 20 pieces at you to indicate that it very much is not. Like the team that by far at this point has benefited most from the lottery is the San Antonio Spurs, historically speaking, and also
my favorite city.
There you go. Okay, well, that's if San Antonio is for you, then San Antonio is for you, Chris. I've probably been there 6 or 7 times. It's very much not for me.
I know.
And it's very much not for most of the people in pro basketball. You could make an argument that San Antonio is the worst market in the NBA. I'm not even kidding.
Let's quantify worst.
Okay. It's boring.
Okay.
It's not very big.
Okay.
It's not very fun.
Okay.
There's not a lot to do. You can only eat nachos and walk around the Riverwalk so many times. It has excellent Mexican food. Doesn't have a lot of culture. And most NBA players have never really chosen to land there via free agency. It's not really unlike us when it comes to the view of the city across the landscape of pro basketball. San Antonio's benefited from the lottery more than anyone. I don't think it's a debate. If you want to throw some other teams in there, it's Cleveland, which is also on the short list of, hey, I don't really want to live there. It's the New Orleans Pelicans. New Orleans, I like New Orleans. I'm not, here to knock on every city. But the point is,
Minnesota's got the number 1 pick twice in the last decade.
Orlando is another one.
Yep.
And, folks around here probably hear Orlando and they think, oh, Disney. No, Central Florida. Much different thing.
Correct.
The fact of the matter is, it hasn't been the Lakers. It hasn't been the Heat. It hasn't been the Knicks. When Zion was available to be drafted number 1 overall, the Knicks had the best chance to get the number 1 pick. It goes to the Pelicans. The majority of the teams that have benefited most from the lottery system are not big market destination cities. So the whole, it's fixed, it's rigged, to what end? To benefit the Spurs and the Cavs? Give me a break.
Well, how often have the Jazz been in the driver's seat to even get a top pick in the last 40 years?
Not often.
Less than 5.
Not often, yeah.
It's got to be less than a handful.
Yeah.
The Darren year, didn't they move up to get Darren?
Yeah, they moved up from 5 to 3.
Okay, and then Cantor
moved up to 2.
Okay,
yeah.
I think Cantor was 3.
Moved up to 3.
Okay, but those were
you're right. Cantor was
2
3.
times where the Jazz weren't supposed to. So the one time that it's supposed to go their way and it doesn't, we're gonna go to these lengths. Let's be honest, guys.
Yeah.
And this goes into the point that I've been making for a long time is you've existed in that mushy middle. You've existed in the 40 to 55 win range for 30 years off and on now. There's a reason why you're not in the mix. And the 1 year you've decided to get in the mix, it doesn't go your way. I get it. But I think the one thing, and I did my homework, man, I did my notes.
I know you did.
One thing that we haven't talked about, or I haven't heard people talk about, is you can be frustrated that the Jazz didn't get the number 1 overall pick, but if you're a Jazz fan, you should probably be more frustrated of the recent lottery picks that clearly are not panning out.
That the Jazz made?
Correct.
Yeah.
If you're talking about Cody Williams, 10th last year, who, according to a lot of people, could have potentially gone number 1 in a very weak draft, barely could play last year. I think Hollinger or somebody had him rated as the worst PER stat nerd thing in the league.
Yep. One of the worst in the history as far as rookies go.
Keontae George, fringe lottery guy. I think he was the 14th.
15?
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah. Mid first round.
Mid-first round, has talent, but clearly isn't a top-tier guy. The Taylor Hendricks one is difficult to judge because of the injury But the year before he got hurt, he was pretty much playing with the stars. So, like, and my point is, while I did my notes, I looked at the teams that are remaining in the NBA playoffs, and there are a multitude of players that were drafted not in the top 5 that are leading their teams right now. Steph Curry, 7th overall. Do you know who the second highest remaining player who was drafted highest outside of the Celtics? So eliminate the Celtics.
Ant?
Not number 1. So you can't do Cat, you can't do Ant. And you
So no
can't do the
Cat, no
Celtics.
Ant. Okay, no Cat, no Ant, no Celtics.
Jamal Murray.
Okay, yeah, Jamal. Yeah.
7th overall. Then you have Halliburton, 12th.
Mhm.
SGA, 11th. Mikal Bridges, 10th. Jalen Williams, 12th. Jimmy Butler, 30th. Pascal Siakam, 27th. Like, all of these guys have gotten to various points of their careers by playing generally on bad teams. And then, you know, as the story goes, you eventually get to move up. But these are not guys that were considered to be can't-miss prospects. And here they are. I mean, the Pacers, for crying out loud, have Halliburton, who was drafted by the Kings and was a fringe lottery guy. I think a lot of people kind of left Miles Turner for dead once upon a time as like a potential star player. And Siakam had a great run in Toronto. They acquired him via trade. My point is that the infrastructure the Jazz just simply haven't built since dealing Donovan and Rudy.
100%. Jalen Brunson, 33. Nikola Jokic, 41. And the
Draymond
issue,
also another second round.
it's a really good point, because now the issue with where the Jazz find themselves, because of what you just pointed out, you know, the inability so far, you know, Walker Kessler was in
22.
and he was in the Gobert trade.
Yep.
Larry Markkinen in the Mitchell trade. And I keep saying this. Those are the only two where I'm like, yeah, all right, Lowry and Walker. Okay, we've got those two.
But it's still kind of a maybe.
I think those two have you know, I think they've established that they're good.
They are, but
NBA
are
players.
they going to be part of the next good Jazz team?
That's a good question. But where the Jazz find themselves kind of up a creek without a paddle because of even Isaiah Collier. I honestly don't know that I'm ready to say Isaiah Collier is a rotational NBA player for a team that's trying to win. I think he showed some things. Keontae leaves a lot of questions. We'll see what happens with Taylor when he gets healthy. Cody has a marathon to go. The problem with the failures so far of building up an infrastructure that is appealing to other teams is that there are conversations about Phoenix blowing up. There are conversations about Giannis being willing to be traded. If Boston loses tonight with the Tatum injury, they have a new ownership group that will have a luxury tax bill of over $500 million next year just for the right to have the team. Okay, so what's going to happen on the open market this year is there a lot of good players are going to be available. The Jazz don't have anything to offer outside of draft capital. And if you're Milwaukee, you can talk to Oklahoma City about their bevy of draft picks and also Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. Like, you can get two really good young players from OKC, San Antonio, or Houston in addition to the same draft capital the Jazz have. And so if you're Milwaukee, the Jazz just don't have anything to offer for Giannis. They don't have anything to offer for Jaylen Brown or Kevin Durant. Like
they don't have anything to offer anybody.
They're not going to be in the mix. And so it just continues to be this slow build. The question now becomes, Chris, and Tim Bontemps from ESPN wrote a good piece where he quoted a couple of front office people in the NBA that were celebrating the fact that the Jazz and the Wizards specifically did not get the number 1 overall pick because they don't want to see intentional losing rewarded. So 2019, Adam Silver flattens the lottery odds. Since then, the worst team in the NBA has not sniffed the number 1 overall pick one time. What do the Jazz do now? Do they try to change the ethos to actually put their best foot forward? And what does that even look like with this roster?
Well, let's touch on what you were just saying. I don't think they can. They have
because they're not good enough.
They have a bleep ton of cap room, but I don't know who are you going to convince to take a bunch of projects off your hands. Now the picks, the MJ meme, F them picks, or maybe it wasn't him, it was somebody else, but
no, it was MJ.
MJ, okay.
But I think at the time it was bleep those kids.
That's
but,
right.
Yeah.
Which no. But
that's what
correct.
the meme said.
Thank you.
I'm not
I know.
advocating that.
What do they have to offer? They don't. You're talking about a bunch of projects and one-time All-Star, and I know people think that Walker Kessler is the second coming of Mark Eaton, but he's not.
Nice.
Like he's a decent big man who can play defense in the modern NBA where basically nobody plays defense. But does that make a difference when you want to become a deep postseason team?
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
Like I don't. Thinking of the teams that are left, I don't know how many of them have the profile of a player that Walker Kessler represents. Anyways, that's a different story. My point is, we talk about player development with this organization. Look at OKC, man. Those players played on really, really, really bad teams for a long time, and these are outside of Chet, who was a byproduct of being really bad for a long time. These were guys that were drafted late lottery. I don't even know where Lou Dort was drafted, but he developed into a player. I mean,
he may have been undrafted.
He may
off
have
the
been,
top
okay,
of my head.
Okay, so you're talking about the Jalen's, SGA, Lou Dort, and then their circus of
Undrafted 2019.
see, exactly, and their circus of very talented role players.
Yep.
All of guys who were not, big time lottery players. The Jazz haven't shown the ability to develop players even in bad seasons. SGA, I think, will be an exception because I think he was considered the gem of that Chris Paul deal once upon a time, but he was still no guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there a player on this Jazz roster that can sniff even remotely the potential of anybody? Let's say, and maybe this is unfair to compare them to where OKC was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's kind of the closest comp.
Yeah.
And is there anybody on this roster that has the ceiling that some of these guys have?
No, the answer is no. And it's not unfair to compare the Jazz to where Oklahoma City was or where Detroit was or where Orlando was, because the Jazz find themselves in the spot now where those teams were when they were trying to get back to respectability. But the problem is those teams were showing signs. When you started to see what Shea could be as the primary guy, you're like, all right, they've got something there. When Cade got healthy, you're like, they've got something there. When Paolo showed that he should have been the number one pick and not Jabari, you're like, they've got something there. All these teams that I use as an example of them being where the Jazz are at 3-4 years ago had signs of improvement and hope that this team does not have for the fan base. So and we're in lockstep about the inability to acquire a real game changer via trade just based off of what you have on the roster. So what does it look like next year if you add 5 and maybe 21? They have the 21st pick as well. But what you don't do is intentionally lose games by faking injuries with players or having your 7-footer shoot 7 threes a night. What you do is put your best foot forward based off of what you have here. What does that look like? If you're not going to intentionally lose games like they clearly did this year, and you're not inventing injuries for Markkanen, and you're not inventing injuries for Clarkson and Sexton and Collins, and you're playing Walker, and you're actually trying to win because you've now done your calculation that tanking does no good, so we might as well do our fan base a service and actually show up for work. What does that look like with this team? I don't think it's great.
It's best case scenario, it's a 32-win team, which, if we're talking historically, means they might have a better chance of winning.
That's what I'm saying. The Mavs won 39 games.
The lottery.
Yeah.
And I grind on a lot of tape.
I know you do.
Podcasts, and I did a big one for you this week. I listened to the Zach Lowe podcast.
You listened to Zach,
and the fascinating thing that I took away from that was teams voted 29-1 to flatten the curve.
Yes, they did.
Do you know the one team who did not?
Is it the Jazz?
No.
Washington?
OKC. Sam Presti said the only way for a market like ours to get game-changing talent is through the lottery.
Yeah.
The Jazz voted for that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it just leads you to wonder whether or not they're going to change their viewpoint. And they'll get a good player at 5, but it won't be Cooper Flagg.
They just have to get good players.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and it sounds very reductive.
There you go.
But they just simply, I don't know who's in the scouting department, the front office. I know everyone was obsessed with Danny Ainge's ability to draft players because he chose Tatum and Brown, but it hasn't panned out so far, and I just don't know if any of these players on the roster are going to make a leap in the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, the most disheartening thing is that you feel like now, rather than being 3 to 5 years away, they could potentially be 5 to 7 years away.
And as I've talked to you about and other guests on this show, the reality is a lot of teams have gone through 5, 7, 8, 9 years. Detroit hasn't won a home playoff game since 2008. I think Charlotte's gone 21 years without a playoff win. Minnesota just barely won playoff series in back-to-back years for the first time in 25 years. That barely happened.
When KG was there.
Right. I mean, so, like, what the reality is of the current situation, and look, I am not here for the whole, like, hey, it took 3 years to break down. Now we're rebuilt. Shut up. It's so insulting that they would even have the nerve to propagate that message. The reality is we are 3 years into a project that might take 8 or 9 years. It might, okay? Now, there are lightning in a bottle situations that happen all the time. And to your point about the list you read, it doesn't have to happen at one. It's more likely to happen at one. It's more likely to happen in the top three. But based off of the history of this market, our best players being mid-lottery, late first round, some in the second, Paul Millsap and others, and other examples as well, you can find diamonds in the rough. The best player in the world was a second-round pick. But at this point, they have not shown the ability to draft and develop well, at least this iteration of the Jazz. Final question for this segment. It was posed to me earlier on a show I did. How long will the fans ride? How long do the fans ride? In this market where we went from John and Carl to Darren and Booze, from Darren and Booze to Hayward and Favors, from Hayward and Favors to Rudy and Mitchell, and all of those teams are very competitive, whether you think they were championship teams or not. I didn't, but they were at least competitive. We are now potentially in for the first time that this will take longer than 2 or 3 years. It's already been 3. How long do Jazz fans ride?
I think you could break it down into several tiers. First off, it would behoove the powers that be to be clear and concise about what they want to do and, like, say it into a microphone and probably avoid the phrase big game hunting.
At all costs.
At all costs.
And then sign Drew Eubanks. It's not going to work.
Hey, he got traded.
He did.
He didn't have what it takes to tank.
But that was their first signing after the big game hunting. It was Drew Eubanks.
That's right. I'm fascinated to see what tickets cost, to see if any of that is more massaged to be logical for the product that you're selling to a fan base that doesn't suffer fools and understands what good basketball is. It's a big offseason, man. I mean, like, you can make an argument that this is the biggest offseason 20 years since post John and Carl. But even post John and Carl, you had Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry, little AK bridge.
You had a little AK bridge.
Or you get Darren and Booze and Memo.
At the elbow.
Harp, yeah. On the curl, played football, right, Bowler?
It behooves everybody to be transparent about what they want to do. And when your guy,
which one?
the guy who screamed into the
my
the
guy,
void.
right?
Yeah, your guy.
Hey, my guy went on a run.
Went on a run.
The sun was rising over the Wasatch Mountains.
The goal doesn't change. I would say.
Indeed.
I would ask to say what that goal is. And if you say build a championship contender in Utah, then you have to say then how.
Right. Porter revealed to us that he makes that run every morning. He runs, and then as soon as the sun rises over the Wasatch, he lets out an audible.
Porter does, or your guy?
Porter. Well,
I know Porter does.
Well, but Rye did once, but that's a daily routine for our guy. Yeah.
I told you maybe not at sunrise. I might be fast asleep at that point.
Nothing would have made me more full of joy if I was on a walk with Duke in the morning and suddenly my guy comes running along.
Just screaming.
Shirtless or no? You think he's wearing the shirt?
Oh, he's wearing the shirt.
Long
sleeve.
Hat backwards.
Long sleeve.
Hat backwards?
Yeah.
Okay. Just sprinting along the Wasatch Mountains, sun rising, audible, and like viral yell coming from the bottom of the stomach.
Garden State yell. Screaming into the void.
I like it. What was your reaction were you watching the lottery live?
Yeah. I started laughing. And Amanda was like, "Why are you laughing?" And I was like, "Oh, man." I feel for my friends and our friends who work over there.
Sure.
Because I think the messaging was a little off.
Yeah.
You know, the Instagram posts of "we like our odds," where it's like you shouldn't, because you have 14%, like you have an 86% chance of not getting the number 1 pick. So what are you doing?
We like our odds that are not good.
But my reaction was, I feel bad for some friends that work over there, and then it immediately was a tailspin of embarrassment from a lot of local media members.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like,
that was my favorite part.
Everybody was, and I'll say it, and I'm not going to swear, but it's a swear that I can say on air.
Let's hear it.
Everybody was showing their ass.
Oh, for sure.
Everybody was. And it was the encapsulation of all the bad stereotypes about Utah in a couple hours.
Yeah. The local media meltdown may have been my favorite part. I will tell you this. I felt so bad for Ashley. I felt so bad for Ryan's. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to tell another man what to do about his family situation. I don't know that you want to send Ashley in that scenario. Like, I wanted to reach the TV and give her a hug. I felt so bad for her.
Well, I mean, they'll be there next year.
And she's going to be okay. I mean, look, as Ryan on his run with the visceral yell realized.
We'll see who represents them next year.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
If the Jazz, so Zanuck gave the media the interviews after the Jazz got 5.
Mm-hmm.
If the Jazz got 1, who does media?
I would say Justin and Ryan.
You know our guys up there.
Oh, yeah.
And no visceral yell needed after that.
Maybe a different type of visceral yell.
Fair
maybe
enough.
a holler.
A holler.
A hoot and a holler.
Yeah. Bring that swag ASAP. We'll catch a break. Coming up next, BYU has a new athletic director. The Big 12 has their Vegas odds released for over-under. We are going to go through the University of Utah football schedule. Chris is going to tell us win or loss for every single game.
Let's go.
Some college football coming up on the other side with CK Live in studio. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Chris Camerani live in studio for another big segment. By the way, thanks for leaving your house on a rainy day. We usually only get you when the sun is shining.
Correct. Yeah, it's we can't win them all. We were winning them a lot in end of April, early May.
Yep.
But I'll take it. It's not snow.
The light at the end of the tunnel has already come and gone.
Yeah.
We're good. I mean, I definitely woke up to walk the dog today in 38-degree weather and rain at 7 a.m., and I wasn't thrilled about that.
But it's like it's a tolerable 38 degrees.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like in this, you get the crispness of the air.
Mm-hmm.
And I think May's the best month of the year.
I agree with that, weather-wise. How
Yes.
many Cotopaxi jackets do you have?
So many.
I need to get at least one, because every time you wear one in, I'm more of a Patagonia guy.
Okay.
North Face,
Oh, okay.
East Coast, you know the deal.
My brother-in-law, legend, Ben,
What up, Ben?
he used to be one of the head designers there.
So you got hook up
But now
on deal.
He's at Black Diamond.
Oh. Ben
Very,
sounds
very talented kid.
Ben sounds like a guy I need to get to know.
You should.
So would he hook you up on deals with jackets?
I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
No, I mean, like back in the day, would he?
Yes.
But not anymore.
Friends and family discount.
Can I get that?
Are you friends?
I'm friends with the family.
Well, you got to know Ben. I got to introduce you to Ben.
Well, I know Amanda.
Yeah.
I know Leo.
Yeah.
Can I be a friend of the family?
You can.
Thank you. Ben, if you're listening, hook me up with a discount code. Actually, you know what? Don't.
Is there a Ben Checketts?
There is. My little brother
There you
Ben.
go.
He's the creative director at Roan.
Must be something.
You're also welcome to a family friends discount at Roan. Go to roan.com.
All right.
I rescind that ask because it's one of the things I don't like about our market, where everyone wants everything for free.
A favor.
No one will ever pay for tickets. You got to know someone. No one's ever going to buy a jacket. You need 25% off. So you know what? I am going to buy a Cotopaxi jacket without a discount.
And I'm going to buy something from Roan.
You already have a hat.
No. Oh, I do. My white one, yeah.
Yeah, the white
But I
one.
only wear it golfing, so.
So once a year.
Correct.
All right. Give me a quick hot take. RSL is in action tonight.
Okay.
I know nothing about Portland other than they're good this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about them?
I don't. My hot take is that basically it's the same thing that I said last week. RSL does one thing okay sometimes. They Diego Luna well sometimes.
He's so good, man.
And other than that, they don't do anything well.
Yeah.
Do you know how many former RSL strikers scored on Saturday?
Chicho.
Okay.
Anderson.
Yep.
The Moose. The Moose is freaking loose, dude. Shout out John Paul. I know the Moose got one. The reason I know the Moose got one is I was playing golf with Elliot.
Yep.
And he was celebrating all of his former players playing well.
Yep. And then former Academy Monarch product Milan Olaski scored for St. Louis.
He's still around.
He was in Europe, came back. St. Louis signed him.
He was like
or San Diego, sorry. San Diego signed him.
He was like a good young player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 4.
Okay.
4 former RSL. Well, I guess, and we can count if we're counting former players. Albert scored 2.
We got to count Albert.
5 former RSL players scored, and first start for your guy, Big Willie Goals.
Yeah, he is my guy.
How did it go?
Didn't go well. Couple yellows. Our guy's out tonight. Johnny Russell available for selection this evening, I believe.
Big deal.
That is a big deal. You think they win tonight?
No.
They lose 2-1. Diego scores.
They lose. Yeah, I'll go. I'll do that.
Okay.
I mean, he has 7 goals, and everyone else. I think the second leading scorer on the team is a bunch of guys tied for 1.
That is correct, including our guy Sam Junka, who's the backup left back.
Yep. And I get that they are in dire straits on the back line. I think Gladys suspended, or one defender suspended because of yellow card accumulation. Then a bunch of other dudes are out. I don't know. I haven't heard, but Vera got to be out for a while, dude.
That was a tough knock.
I know I bring it up every week, but shoot. My bad.
We did it. We did it.
Shoot, my bad.
It's only taken 4 years.
That's right.
It's all good.
You can send me the bill.
No, you realize Amy Donaldson swears every time
Does
she's
she?
on the show, so you're in good company. But
so yeah,
we did it.
Big Willie Goals. At least it wasn't the other one.
No. And, we really should operate with a dump button, but, I guess that's not in the budget.
So you're going to go 2-1 Portland?
I'll go 2-1 Portland. Diego scores.
In the rain.
Is Diego already better than you thought he could ever be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you saw what he was capable of when he played with Chicho and Gomez last year because he was scoring goals and assisting. I think at one point, I think at this time last year, he already had like 10 assists.
Diego?
I think he has 0 assists this year. I think he has 7 goals and 0 assists.
Let's see.
Which is kind of emblematic of the metaphor of carrying a team on your shoulders.
Let's see.
You
Pulling up
fact
the
check me?
stats. Well, I'm just, pulling up the stats. Computer's running a little slow today.
Yeah.
7 goals. And, every goal he scores is like a wonder strike.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just like tap-ins or whatever. Like, who was was it Yeremov Sisian, who just seemed like every game he would just kind of
That's a great pull.
score a tap-in. 7 goals, 2 assists for Diego.
2 assists, okay.
Does Diego suck? Is he just not good?
He doesn't suck, because if he sucked, he wouldn't be a professional on one of the better lower-level teams in Europe. I think you have to be somewhat of an alpha if you want to come in as an attacking player in MLS at the DP spot. And it doesn't even need to be like ambiance. You just have to deliver. Like, I think of Albert. Like, when Albert came, he was Hobby's replacement. He had huge shoes to fill, and it was an impossible job. But if you look at his stat record during his time here, like 6 or 7 years, the dude scored a lot of goals.
Yeah, he did.
And
He's
like
really good.
Really good. I mean, like really good. And if that's going to be kind of how you carry yourself on the field, you don't need to be the loudest person in the locker room. You don't need to be, your guy KB5. You don't need to be throwing your weight around. But if you're an attacking player, man, you got to produce. And I think we talked about this last week, but the summer transfer window signings from last summer are no bueno right now.
Yeah, I mean, Diego's the bright spot. Emeka, shout out Nate Bench, and Ojeda, those 2 central holding mids are good.
They're very good.
There's just nothing up top, and there's no answer on the roster. I try to wax positive about the club. It's hard to right now.
Do you think, I'm going to flip the script on you.
Oh, wow.
Do you think the Millers are going to splash the cash this summer for a high-profile player?
I do. Now, the question that I keep coming back to is whether or not, and it might be too late. It might be too late because the academy is developed and the ethos is developed. I just wonder, because I know Steve Stark. Steve wants to win. He's a competitive dude. I think there's probably, I don't know this for sure, but I wonder how the Millers would articulate the way Ryan is running the Jazz and their decision to lose on purpose. The Millers never wanted to do that. They always wanted to try to put a competitive team on the floor. And I know there are Jazz fans listening that will probably say, well, they never would play luxury tax, and I understand that. But whenever I hear the whole the Millers aren't going to invest in soccer because they wouldn't pay luxury tax in the NBA. Luxury tax in the NBA is $180 million. Spend 20 or 30 on the club. I think they'll do that.
Yeah.
But I wonder if at some point anybody will say out loud, maybe we don't lean in only to developing young players and then moving them on. Maybe we want some good players here. That's my hope.
Yeah. And to your point, they bought a franchise that is one of the worst in the Western Conference right now. And in NWSL, they have the worst team in the NWSL right now. Sooner or later, the rubber's going to have to meet the road, and you're going to have to see some infusion of fiscal means to upgrade the roster.
There's no other way.
It's it. Yes, keep the academy going. They will churn out some players every once in a while, but it doesn't work at the level that it does in Europe. And you have to be able to convince your fan base that you give a damn about them.
Are you watching? So welcome to Wrexham. Do you watch that?
I do not.
You do not. Are you anti Ryan Reynolds and the other dude, or Rob, whatever his name is?
McElhaney. It's not that I'm anti. I just don't have a lot of bandwidth for it right now.
Yeah.
I just watch more depressing stuff.
Are you all caught up on Gemstones?
Oh, yeah. We finished it.
I still have the finale.
Okay.
I was out of town last week.
Are we saying finale or finale?
Finale.
Okay.
Or I don't know.
Sounds sophisticated.
The final iteration. Did you watch Goggins on SNL?
We did, yes.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
I love Goggins. Baby Billy will be, I think, one of the top characters in TV history. I like him in Fallout. That's probably not really up your avenue, but it's a video game show, post-apocalyptic, pretty good.
Okay.
Plays a dude without a face
Okay.
and nose. But yeah, love Goggins.
Yeah, no, I
Vice
did.
principals too.
Indeed, I did catch a little SNL with Goggins, but I got to finish the. I have to finish the final episode of Gemstones, and I have 2 left of Severance.
What?
I didn't finish Severance.
You're holding off on Severance, man?
I had not intentionally. I just had some traveling, and then I got behind, and I had to watch like 4 straight 2 weeks ago, and I've got 2 more left, so I'll get that done. BYU has a new athletic director. His name is Brian Santiago. I don't know Brian well. I've met him a couple of times. I played in a group behind him at Steve Young's charity golf tournament. Name drop, flex, BYU fans, what up?
How's the swing?
Good player.
Yeah.
Good player. I have been surprised to both hear from privately BYU fans and then read online BYU fans not react positively to this hire. But from what I can ascertain, the feel is like I was at the Wilk in line for chocolate milk, and Santiago did not say hi to me. I was waiting in line for Cougar Tail Lavelle Edwards. I saw Santiago. I tried to say hello, and he kept walking.
He handed me the razor and said, "Go shave."
Correct. That's the feel I get. I haven't heard anything like this won't work because he's not good at his job, or this won't work because he doesn't have good relationships. It's the feel of church ran over and he left without saying hello to our family. Like it's weird personal interaction. Like he doesn't seem to have the reputation of a very nice guy.
Okay.
And here's the thing. It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
And that's another thing that we do here that drives me crazy. Like if you had one interaction at J-Dogs in Provo where he took your barbecue sauce and you had to ask for more, it doesn't mean he's not going to be good at his job. That's the feel I get. That's kind of the take on the hire. What he is, my understanding, is very good friends with Ryan Smith and Danny Ainge. And that's fine because this really is a relationship business. And if you're going to be an AD at a P4 institution in the current landscape of collegiate athletics, your number one qualification is, are you friends with rich people? And without Ryan Smith and Danny Ainge, Kevin Young's not the head coach of BYU. And in 1 year, Kevin Young has turned that thing into something that, if it keeps ticking, is going to be really, really good. So I don't know if you could add any context to this whole situation, but that's kind of my understanding of where we're at with this new hire.
I don't know Brian at all, and that I did not know that there is a undercurrent of frustration, can we say, or dissatisfaction?
Dissatisfaction, yeah.
Well, I'll go on a tangent for you. Once upon a time, somebody did hand me a razor at BYU and said, "You have to go shave or else you can't be allowed into this dance."
Wow.
Guess what I did?
You didn't shave.
In.
Oh, you snuck in.
Oh, yeah.
That a boy. Because you weren't a student down there.
No. Come on. They
just for clarification.
They were like, here's this 99-cent razor that will slice your skin off. No shaving cream.
Did you have the thick CK
it wasn't
beard
so
too?
thick, but it was thick enough like yours where it was like it was going to hurt.
Yeah.
So I just went into the bathroom, faked it, came out and snuck in. Anyways.
Was it a linger longer?
It was a linger.
It was, okay.
Yeah.
Important context.
Brian Santiago has very big shoes to fill, and maybe there is a portion of the fan base that is nervous that he may not be able to live up to the expectations and the types of hires. I mean, Tom Holmoe, the guy really oversaw tumultuous change, good and bad, for the amount of time he was there.
Yeah.
Like going through the route of independence, which was much maligned by a lot of folks here locally. You know, BYU fans in my life still are angry about it. But the dude made hires, and when you make hires, generally things work out. So to your point, Brian Santiago's number one thing on his list has to be maintain relationships with those heavy hitters, the guys who open up their checkbooks. And when the time comes, you have to figure out who's going to be, leading your profitable programs, because if you have the right people in place, you're going to be okay more often than not.
And I think one of the frustrations that's been shared to me with people who are close to BYU athletics and who it's very close to their hearts, and BYU fans are very passionate. They love their teams. I think one of the things that they were expecting, based off of, I think Shane Reese, excuse me, Shane Reese,
C period Shane Reese,
president of BYU, 3 months ago when Tom announced his retirement, he said, okay, national search. We are interviewing big hitters, heavy hitters across the country. And, you know, whether it's Scott O'Neill, who was with the Sixers and now is the CEO of Live, or the name I threw out was Brian Rolap, who is Roger Goodell's like right-hand man. I don't know how realistic that is. Brian lives in Darien, Connecticut. He's in my family's stake, and so we know the Rolaps. And the feeling is when Goodell is done, Brian Rolap could be the commissioner of the NFL. But he's a Mormon dude, BYU guy, LDS, excuse me. And I think they were expecting – I think BYU fans were expecting some big, heavy hitter from somewhere else in the country that has run pro teams, that has – like Scott O'Neill would have been a great call, but I think Scott is comfortable where he's at. And Scott is a dynamic sports professional who's a really good dude, would have been a great hire. But there may have been like an over-expectation of what the athletic director at BYU means. And you're not going to leave your job as the number 2 at the NFL to go run BYU athletics. You're just not. So it's like everything else we talk about. I think the expectation was up here. And I think the Santiago news kind of caught people in an underwhelming fashion.
Do you think the precedent of them being able to steal the hire of Kevin Young maybe set their mind in motion?
Maybe.
That way, where
Fair
they're like,
point.
If we can get the guy who is going to be the next big NBA head coach, why can't we get the guy who is a GM of a major sports franchise to run our athletic department?
Maybe.
I mean, it seemed like conventional wisdom always pointed to Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
In this day and age, I think it would be very difficult for somebody who has not been in the room on a day-to-day basis during this insane amount of change to come in and be like, yeah, let me learn about this ongoing house settlement versus the NCAA that is changing at every basic turn every single day. Tell me about NIL. Tell me about this and that. Brian Santiago has been in all those meetings for ad nauseum forever, so he knows.
27 years ago, came to BYU as a member of Steve Cleveland's staff on the basketball side.
Okay.
I believe you can hear Steve Cleveland breaking down basketball in the market somewhere, mornings. And then 20 years ago, Tom hires Brian. I don't know how long he was the associate AD, but I do know he was one of Tom's right-hand men for 20 years.
Yeah.
And to your point, to watch Tom traverse the space and learn from him on the job, my guess would be Tom probably lobbied for it. To have Santiago get the gig. There's this narrative out there that Brian Santiago was like their 6th or 7th choice. I can't speak to that. But the position of athletic director, I don't think is as appealing of a job as most people fully believe.
Why would it be?
I don't think,
Especially now.
Yeah.
And especially, listen, man, you have to understand what you're getting into at a school like BYU for the good and for the difficult as well.
Right.
Like the fact that they've been able to right the ship, so to speak, with Kalani hire and bringing Kevin KY, your guy.
My guy.
Being able to bring them on. But just the entire landscape of what you're facing, you have to understand what you're going to have to do on a day-to-day basis. Bringing in somebody who, Scott O'Neill's, where is he at? Sixers or Flyers?
Scott O'Neill now, I believe, is the CEO of Live Golf.
Live Golf.
But he was running, the Flyers and the Sixers.
Okay.
So he's got that Saudi money,
Correct.
like he's say what you want about it, and we can, and we have, but I don't think Scott's leaving that to be the AD of BYU.
Exactly, and we can't GRAMA or FOIA request what these guys are being paid because they are at a private institution. My guess would be it would be a step down for a lot of folks who are in the professional realm, especially if he's getting that Live money.
Right.
So it just made sense for the guy to follow Tom as somebody who has basically been with him for the last several years.
Do you recall, and I'm honestly asking to ask, because I was thinking about this when I was getting these texts from BYU fans, like, hey, you're going to talk about the Santiago stuff? Well, yeah, he's the AD at BYU. Okay, well, he's not very nice. He's this or that or whatever. And then some of the online stuff where there are people that are very outward about like how mad they are that this was the deal.
I did not know this. I got to dive in.
Yeah, dive in. And, just the position of athletic director, I don't know how much context or color I've added to the conversation nationwide, but there have been a lot of Ute fans that have soured on Mark. A lot of Ute fans have soured on Mark Harlan. And I'll continue to say Mark personally has always been good to me, comes on the show, he answers questions, all that stuff. The whole post-game presser after the BYU-Utah football game was just a really odd choice that did not land well with anybody, including Ute fans, and it left him open for a ton of criticism from BYU fans. I still would have loved to be a fly on the wall when Brett Yormark woke up and said, "What? Are you kidding?" Like, I actually think Mark got off pretty easy based off of what he had to say. So do you feel like there has been a little bit of a change of a feel in the community about Mark Carlin at all? Does that land at all with you? And I don't know if it's the AD just being an easy target for people because sports fans are so crazy.
Anybody who's in charge is going to bear the brunt of a lot of grief that folks have. I think it's hard to say. It's hard to distill down to the corners of the very sad existence of sports internet as well. But listen, I think Utah fans wanted the running Utes to be resurrected for a long time, and they got pretty much everybody wanted to be hired was Alex Jensen.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Whittingham's just going to keep doing it until he decides to ride his motorcycle forever, and they've been raising money for facilities and all that stuff. One I think you can say a misstep is I think the collective got off to a slower start when NIL really took off. So I'm interested to see how that goes and see how Utah handles if and when the House settlement gets finalized and everybody's allotted that $20.5 million, how Mark and his staff decide to really break that down to various teams and players on their athletic rosters.
Yeah, and I do think there's another thing, and I don't think it's as, and we've kind of discussed this, I don't think it's as prevalent with the University of Utah as it is with BYU, because even I listened to the introductory press conference earlier today where President Reese and Brian Santiago addressed the media and addressed the contingent, and it really is steeped in we needed a BYU guy. We needed a BYU blue guy. Mm-hmm. And even the religious dogmatic language is used. Like, we need somebody who loves Jesus. Like, they talk like that. Like, mm-hmm. So we need a BYU guy who's going to further the message of Jesus, who's going to foster a community of disciple graduates who move on and make a difference in the world. So I know that's more unique to 45 miles down south and isn't as prevalent here in Salt Lake. But is there a little bit of a feel, you think, that Mark isn't necessarily a guy that is a Utah guy, a Salt Lake guy? I mean, Dr. Hill wasn't either.
That was going to be my point.
But also I wanted to ask you, I don't recall, and I was in the media when Dr. Hill was the AD, because I can remember when he and Monson had their thing. Right. And
which time?
Well, right. But I was doing radio with Gordon at the time when Dr. Hill came out and said, Gordon wrote a piece criticizing, because I don't know that Dr. Hill really ever wanted to play BYU in anything. I'm not speaking for him. I just don't think he was a big fan of that dynamic.
Yeah.
Monson writes this huge piece like Dr. Hill's wrong here. Yep. Chris comes out with the whole like self-serving media. After a while, Chris agreed to come on our show, and it was really frosty, and that was doing radio with Gordon, which made it a lot of fun. Did Dr. Hill seem to have the same sort of criticism levied his way from the community, or maybe social media gives people voices?
Social media gives people voices. Once upon a time, there was a very public back and forth between Chris and Kyle during some contract stuff, and my colleagues, some of my closest friends, Matt Piper and Kyle Goon, were on the beat then.
Yeah.
And it got pretty frosty and contentious publicly between those two. But one thing I would say about Chris is that, like, he understood that things could get sideways, but, like, it helps everybody out to, like, sit down and talk it out as adults.
Yes.
In private and on the record.
Well said.
And there's a reason why he was so good at what he did for such a long time, is because when you have a working relationship that is as unique as the media that's covering an institution and the guy in charge of calling the shots of a multi-million-dollar athletic department, it's not always going to be roses. And I think one thing that's been kind of missed here is that because a story may come out that's not portraying your university or your team in a very glowing light is not a personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes facts can be facts. But I think, unfortunately, and especially in this market, we've had this kind of shift towards media members who are always going to put a spin on it that makes the people or the team or the institution that they're covering seem like they can do no wrong. And that is not the right way of doing the job. But that is for the Reality Check podcast.
Well, you and I are on the same page. All right, I've kept you too long, and I know that you need to get home to watch and you also want to watch the Knicks advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years.
Question before I go.
What do you got?
What is Brian Santiago's first Halloween costume?
It won't be near as good as Tom's, I'll tell you that much.
It will not.
Good to see you, CK.
Thanks, man.
All right, we got 3 hours in the books. We got 1 hour to go. Keep it right here. 5 o'clock hour. The Drive is next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get it. It is Drive at 5 time on a Wednesday afternoon. Happy Wednesday to you. You are halfway through that work week. You're one day closer to the weekend. Chilly Wednesday afternoon, chilly Wednesday period. It was 38 degrees here in Salt Lake City at about 7 a.m. Right now it's about 45 degrees and cloudy and rainy on a random May cold front. But as it is every single day, it is good to have you with us. The New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics have tipped off from TD Garden. The Celtics, even though they will be without Jason Tatum, not just tonight, but for a long, long time, are a 4.5-point favorite. Mikal Bridges' mid-range game, 2-0 Knicks. Man, I hope the Jazz are good soon. It is fun to have a team in the playoffs. So we'll see if the Knicks can make the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2000, where they lost to Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers. Ironically enough, the Indiana Pacers await the winner of New York and Boston. The Golden State Warriors will try to stave off elimination, just like the Celtics are attempting to tonight in Minneapolis, without Stephen Wardell Curry. There were some conversations that Steph would give it a go tonight, but he will not. He has been cleared for some light on-court work and will be questionable for Game 6 if the Warriors can win Game 5 tonight. Derek White, corner 3, I don't know, maybe guard him, Josh Hart. Boston 3, New York 2, early on at TD Garden. 5 o'clock hour of the program tonight is brought to you by our friends at Advanced Window Products, where you can get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. It is a local Salt Lake company operated by our guy, Nate Orchard, still the mayor of Sac Lake City, and his buddy, Jake Weber. Family-owned business that have been around for 40 years now. Now, the other nice thing is if you don't need new windows now, but you anticipate needing new windows maybe in a month when the weather gets really warm or a couple of months after summer's over, give them a call today, get on the schedule, and you're going to lock in the savings of $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. So Advanced Window Products at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or online at advancedwindows.com. So I will do my best not to give you a play-by-play of the Knicks-Celtic game, but it is on in the studio. Tell Karl Anthony Towns to get into the paint, please. All right, anyway, moving on. So NBA playoffs continue tonight. Of course, the story that has reverberated across the market is the NBA draft lottery, where the Utah Jazz landed at 5. NBA Combine is going on right now, and a lot of these players are being analyzed, and they're being watched. And, you know, we'll kind of see what sort of situation the Jazz find themselves in. There are a ton of conversations today about potential movement come draft night. I don't know how many announcements we're going to hear prior to the actual draft. Of course, the league calendar is still going on with games being played. San Antonio at 2 is very intriguing because they already have De'Aaron Fox. So do they try to get off the De'Aaron Fox, add Dylan Harper to put Dylan Harper next to Stephon Castle and Victor Wembanyama and go very young? And does the Dallas Mavericks simply stay at 1? Do the Dallas Mavericks stay at 1 and draft Cooper Flagg? According to our own Tim McMahon, who joined us yesterday, the edict has been handed down from ownership that, yes, we are staying at 1 and drafting Cooper Flagg. But because of the craziness and unexpected nature of both San Antonio at 2 and Philly at 3, who technically still has Paul George and technically still has Joel Embiid and technically still has Tyrese Maxey, are they willing to move off of 3? And what does that mean for the Utah Jazz? Problem is, Jazz don't have assets and good players that would motivate. I don't think. Maybe Philly loves Lauri Markkanen. If you are the Utah Jazz and you've done your calculation that after Cooper Flagg is off the board at 1 and after Dylan Harper is off the board at 2, do you love VJ Edgecombe enough that you would move 5 in a good piece to get 3 from Philly? 5 in Lauri Markkanen feels like a lot to move up to 3, but a lot of conversations out there today that have included the Utah Jazz about potential movement come draft night. Now, at 5, if VJ Edgecombe falls to 5, I don't think he's going to. That feels like a big win. The names you're going to hear thrown about at 5. Now, Ace Bailey, who was listed all year long at Rutgers at 6'10", measured at 6'8" at the Combine. And he has got a mile to go anyway. I should say a marathon to go anyway. Do his measurements change the calculation, and could he be there at 5? Ace Bailey at 5 would feel like a win. VJ Edgecombe at 5 would feel like a win. The names you're going to hear bandied about are Jeremiah Fears, point guard from Oklahoma, Trey Johnson, who is pretty intoxicating, quite frankly. He could be the best shooter in the draft. He played at Texas as a freshman, really shot up draft boards after killing it at the end of the year. He's a big two guard that can shoot it from the outside. The Malowatch kid from Duke, to me, is not an option for the Jazz because essentially he's a more athletic Walker Kessler. Con Knipple, another Duke kid who's a really, really good shooter and a big wing. 41% from three is thought to be one of the options the Jazz could look at. But ultimately, none of that is all that exciting for Jazz fans that were hoping that Cooper Flagg would be the prize. So we'll see. Only time will tell. The Jazz have tremendous flexibility as far as their salary cap. It's their books are very clean, and they maintain a treasure trove of draft assets. But fans don't cheer for cap space. Fans don't cheer for future draft picks. Fans want something now. Tim Bontemps, ESPN, wrote a piece today quoting a number of different front office executives, two of whom were celebrating the fact that both the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards were not rewarded for their lack of integrity this year, and were not rewarded for being unserious about winning, and were not rewarded when it came to tanking. So, draft lottery results have bred a lot of conversation. Here's what the Bontemps piece basically laid out. He said there were some league insiders who were very happy that the teams that spent the year tanking and trying to be at the top of the draft, namely the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards, did not succeed in securing the top pick. Quote, the good thing about lottery night is those teams that did the teams that did not get help. Tank all you want, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. Kind of have to see how that goes down when it comes to the future of the way teams approach this. Does lend to the question, will the Utah Jazz be a little bit more serious about playing their veteran players and not inventing injuries for Markkanen and at least trying to win this year? I still don't think it's the right approach, but obviously the pain tolerance that the Jazz asked the fans to kind of undertake this year did not lead to the reward we were all RSL in action tonight, 7:30 Mountain Time, taking on Portland. Random midweek game. Fortunately, the weather's not great, but apparently a sellout crowd out at America First Field. We'll see if either the Celtics or the Warriors can survive and advance, or the Knicks and the T-Wolves can make their way through to the next round. Adam Rittenberg, in addition to Eli Letterman and Max Olson, released their off-season rankings for P4 football teams, which is totally a new thing. So in the Big 12, real quick, their assertion is Texas Tech had the best offseason. At 2 is Arizona State. At 3, Baylor. 4, Iowa State. 5, K-State. 6, TCU. And at 7 is the University of Utah. 8, Cincinnati. 9, BYU. So there you go. 7.5 wins is the over-under for BYU football for Utah. Well, for Utah and BYU football this year, the Vegas over-under 7.5 wins. So a little off-season college football, which is always fun. All right, Porter, tomorrow are we talking about the New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think so. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the Celtics and the fact that they're not going to go down easy. I think without Jason Tatum, they do not have, and this is kind of crazy saying this, they don't have the roster to beat the Knicks, right? But with OG Anunoby, with Mikal Bridges, with Jalen Brunson, with Karl Anthony Towns' length, with Mitchell Robinson giving the Celtics fits in certain moments, right? When you see them having to kind of go to the Haka Mitchell thing because he's giving their big so many issues, you need to be at full strength, and you definitely have to have your best player. And it sounds crazy as a Knicks fan verbalizing this, but I think that they need Jason Tatum in order to beat this team, especially coming down from 3-1.
Bridges has been so good, man. 5 first-round picks, and now you see why. So we'll see. All right, I want to tell you about my friends at IFA Country Stores before we say goodnight. Summer vacations and warmer weather are just beyond the horizon. As the days grow longer and brightly colored flowers begin making their appearance, it's time to start planning and applying Step 2 of IFA's 4+ annual lawn care program, designed with a blend of vital, macro, and micronutrients. Look at that. IFA Step 2 fertilizer promotes strong roots and vibrant colors in your yard. At IFA and IFA.coop, Brigham Young has a new athletic director. His name is Brian Santiago. We're going to probably get some guests on to kind of break that down. And that's the bulk of the local news going down today. So, Porter, let's get out of here and watch some playoff basketball. What comes our way on a Thursday edition of the program?
Yeah, we'll recap the NBA playoffs from tonight and the last few nights with our guy Tony Jones. Of course, Tony covering the Nuggets, covering the Jazz, and we can go all over the map with the NBA with Tony. The NBA Daily Assist with Zach Harper on a Thursday this week. And you mentioned BYU's new AD, Jazz draft, lottery. We can get to all of it with one Alema Harrington. He's got a golf tournament coming up, so we'll plug that with him. I talked to Lemma into coming in studio, so we'll sit down a full hour with that guy.
Good old A-Train. Good people. One of the nice guys in our market. And that's kind of a short list. Anyway, good night on a Wednesday. Special thank you to Quentin Richards. Do you think you're on the list?
I wasn't going to say anything, but
you want to know if you're on the list, don't you? There's a list.
I'm not sure if I'm on that list.
Okay.
I'm not like a mean guy, but I don't know if I'm on that list either.
Okay. All right. There's a list, just so you know. It'll stay private. Special thank you today. You're on it. To Quentin Richardson, Sarah Todd, Neil Smith, and Chris Camerati for any of the sound you missed from the show today. Go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's my favorite way to listen to the station. And then finally, for what we do, in our space for 4 hours every afternoon, we ask you to support our podcast page because it helps out what we do. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. So subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Enjoy your Wednesday evening. Talk to you on a Thursday edition of The Drive. And as always, you can find it right here on ESPN 700, 92 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.